just like I said when you walked in here, this is my favorite way of doing the show. We shook hands 4 minutes ago, and I know very little about you.
Yep.
And we just hit it blind, and I get to learn about you in real time with the audience. I think that makes for the most authentic conversation. But also, the Fieldcraft guys and Lappin vouch for you. So it's like, you might not know it yet, but we're already homies.
Yeah. Right.
You know? Yeah, Lappin said you were up here for an event they had in the gym, right?
Yeah, so Fieldcraft came out. Mike and Greg came up so that Mike could speak on his book.
Okay.
Did a little event here at the gym. Yeah, it was awesome. So I got to reconnect. I actually met Mike several years ago up at a rally race in Shelton, Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, he was out there driving for Black Rifle.
Got it.
I grew up with one of the co-founders of Black Rifle, Jared Taylor.
Okay.
And so he invited me out, was like, hey, come to the pits, hang out with us. Next thing you know, I'm meeting Mike Glover. And then, you know, fast forward a couple of years and he was coming up here. So I was like, well, shit, I'll go see Mike. And then Greg was with him. And that's where I first met Greg.
Yeah, dude, Lappin's like...
He's the man.
He's one of my best friends on planet Earth, man.
For sure.
It's funny, too, because we actually connected over Instagram. But we both worked for Triple Canopy at the same time. We both did a bunch of contractor deployments around the same time. Or not around the same time, actually the same time. We were just on different teams.
No kidding.
And so, like, our inner circle, we know everybody. We have 100 mutual friends, but we'd never just crossed paths. And it was... I saw a picture of him on Instagram. It was a jiu-jitsu picture, and I just commented on it. And then he commented back, and it's like, oh, this dude seems cool. I'll follow him. this little Instagram bromance, right? And then I was at one of my buddies' houses for a party a year or two later, and he just walks in, and I was like, where do I know that motherfucker from? I was like, oh, we're Instagram friends. And then ever since then, it's been a bromance. But nice. Yeah, it's just good people, man.
Absolutely.
You know? Did you do the shooting stuff with them too?
I haven't yet. No. So
okay.
I didn't sign up for the class. I just came out to retouch base with Mike, ended up meeting Greg. And then that led in. I just went down last week and hung out with them in Utah and did the Fieldcraft headquarters and
got it.
Things like that. So no shooting yet for them.
Nice, dude. And so, man, I think the best way to just dive right into this is just introduce yourself, give a little bit about your background and who you are, where you're from, and then we just tell your story and have fun with it.
Well, Jeff Ottele, retired U.S. Navy EOD tech. I grew up in Paulsbo, Washington, so actually not very far from where we're sitting right now.
Okay. I'm familiar with Paulsbo.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the boat on the other side of the gym, but we'll take it out of Everett and go to Paulsbo with the kids all the time.
Oh, yeah, the little marina down there?
Yeah, the little Viking town. Yeah,
man.
It's my people.
Yeah, so I grew up there when there was like just a handful of thousand people. It's grown up a lot now, but grew up there, graduated North Kitsap High School out there, ended up playing college football at the University of Idaho.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, right. So I fought hard to get there, but my college career didn't last that long. Ended up coaching there for a little while before I left. Did a little bit of short jobs, like I did a mechanic job, and then I worked up in the oil fields. And then in 2013, I joined the Navy.
Okay.
And then, yeah, all the way up until my recent retirement in 2024.
Nice. What, so how old were you in 2013 then? Cause I mean,
25.
25. Yeah. So you were an old man in boot camp.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is weird to think about now because I was still so immature and stupid.
Bro, I think about that. Like, dude, I was a Ranger team leader in Afghanistan at 21 years old, leading patrols.
Dude, that's wild.
You know, and it's like, at the time, that was just life. Yeah. You know, like the kids in regiment were 18, 19, and then the old men were 22, 23. It's funny, man. What made you land on EOD? Because I think you guys are nuts, man.
Yeah, and I get that a lot, right? And a lot of people base that off like the movie The Hurt Locker. And that's just an atrocious version.
Is it really?
It's pretty bad.
Okay, someone had recently recommended that. I actually haven't seen it.
Okay.
So I should keep it that way?
I like Jeremy Renner. You know, he's a good actor, and it is what it is, right? It's the Hollywood take on that. Hollywood's going to spin things and make it all fucked up anyways. So it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But when you're actually looking at the TTPs and how things are actually done in real life, that is horrible. It's just astronomically cowboy, makes it seem like, oh, just cut the red wire. That's just not how shit goes.
Okay.
But how did I get there? So just like everybody, my first thought was, hey, I'm going to join the military, but I want to do something special. I'm not just going to be fleet or big army or whatever.
Yeah.
And so growing up, a whole bunch of my friends were like, hey, SEALs are the best. So that was what I had in my head. So I was like, well,
It
shit.
sucks that your friends misdirected you.
No, well, and then
I'm joking.
No,
dude.
I mean, fast forward, I did some time with the Army, and I would have loved to, if I could do it all over again, Army SF or Air Force PJ.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
And I no disrespect to the Navy EOD. That's been a great career, and I loved it. But Army SF, I had an amazing time working with those dudes, and it was just a whole different ball game that I really felt like I fit into pretty well.
Yep.
And then the PJ side of thing, the medical side, and just their ability, like, you think EOD is a pretty like multi-tool. Those dudes add the medical side to it. They're phenomenal. They're
Bro,
awesome dudes.
I tell people all the time that the PJs are kind of like the most unrecognized of the special operations units.
Yeah.
And they have the highest attrition rate. It's
Yeah.
one of the hardest units to
believe
be a
that.
part of. A good friend of mine was a PJ, and they started with 107 for their selection, and they graduated 7.
That's
That's
wild.
unheard of.
That's crazy.
Like Rangers, like 50%, or you know what I mean? You hear that, and you're like, oh, dude, you're cutting a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, they're literally just sifting through the masses and cherry picking the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
And it requires an absolute high level of physical fitness. But then again, all the medical stuff, those dudes are super brilliant too.
Oh, yeah.
So fascinating career. I know a lot of young guys listen to the show and like are interested in hearing different military careers. And if you're an absolute stud of studs, PJs is a good route.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would also recommend EOD. Like it's not as like PJs get less glory, right? Just because everyone doesn't really know, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I feel like EOD is kind of in that realm, but not as much so.
Well, dude, that's why I'm excited to have you on, because it's like, I mean, I've worked around EOD my whole career, but I don't really know what the job entails and how you get there and all the details of it. So I'm kind of excited for this.
And I'll do the best I can. Like, to be honest with you, it's super hard to describe because it is so multifaceted. You can't really, like, if someone's like, hey, give me a 2-minute synopsis of what EOD is, you just kind of roll your eyes like, yeah, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
But, you know, looking into the SEAL pipeline kind of got led into like a recruiter who was like, hey, man, have you looked at all the Navy special operations, special warfare side of things? And I was like, no. And he's like, here's everything the Navy offers. The moment he got done describing EOD, I was like, that's way more my speed. I want to do that.
Okay.
And it turns out he was a senior chief, so a E8 master EOD technician.
Oh, so he actually knew what was up.
He did.
And wasn't just a recruiter trying to fill certain billets.
And he's still a very good friend of mine. He lives, 20, 30 minutes from my house. We
Okay.
stay in super close touch. So our relationship has lasted 12 years now.
There's the one story out of the entire history of the U.S. military where a guy has respect for his recruiter.
Yeah. Right. Well, so in all fairness, like my recruiter, I joined when I was in Alaska. So I had like a box store recruiter, right? Like you walk in and there's a guy sitting at a desk and he's just
Yeah.
pumping numbers. So I had that guy for sure. This guy was like he was active duty. I don't even know what you call it. It's I guess it is considered a recruiter billet, but he has no quota. He's just there to facilitate, like, this is what special programs are. And if you're interested, he'll run your PSTs and your testing, and he'll do the specialized side of things to get you a contract.
Okay, I see.
So it's not quite the same as like a true recruiter. Like
He wasn't in the strip
sitting
mall.
No,
Yeah,
exactly.
got
dude.
it.
Yeah, you're not walking in the glass door, saluting the flag, and looking at this guy. No, we actually met up at a restaurant over some beers.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I laid everything out, I was like, no. And it turns out, of course, he's EOD tech. Became a huge mentor of mine, mentored me through my entire career into his retirement and then eventually into mine.
Okay. So then you decide, yeah, EOD is what's calling to me. Do you remember if there was any specific reasons or aspects of the job that were like, fuck yeah, dude?
Just because it's so multifaceted.
Okay.
It's hard to describe it and say like my personal feelings without making it sound like I'm biased or against other. Like, I have no disrespect for the SEALs, but they're predominantly an assault force.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're looking, and then the divers dive predominantly. We had like air rescue and SWIC were the only other options outside EOD. So you had, those were the special operations, special warfare conglomerate of the Navy. And, looking into the SEALs, that sounded appealing. I didn't want to be a predominant diver, just dive all day. That wasn't me. Air rescue didn't seem like the way to go for me. It was a lot of super, super heavy swimming. And I get it that the selection process for everything in the Navy is going to have heavy swimming, but that's like your entire job is just fighting currents, rescuing people out of shitty water.
Okay,
And I'm
so
like,
they're the equivalent of the Navy's Coast Guard rescue divers.
100%.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And since then, they're still a rate, but they're not considered special operations anymore, apparently. They switch things up. And then SWIC didn't really appeal to me because it was predominantly on boats. Like you're on boats, you get big weapons, it's awesome and everything, but you're a transit system for other operations. And it didn't call to me like EOD did.
Yeah. And in today's battlefield too, like how applicable is that?
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, it could switch back very quickly.
For sure.
You know, one ism in the world and all of a sudden we're back in riverine style fighting.
Yeah.
It's like those guys are, you know, everyone wants to be a sweeper now. So,
isn't that how it goes?
Yeah,
The ebbs and flows?
Absolutely. So with the EOD, you know, explosives, you know, every kid loves fire, loves explosions. Like if you're attracted to fireworks, right? So when you're like, hey, we work on bombs, right? Your ears perk up, okay. But then you're expected to, you're held to a high level of shooting because you're integrating into a force. You're an enabling force. So very rarely is it just like an EOD team rolling out the door. And it happened a lot in CENTCOM, but what it's kind of graduated in is EODs augmented to different forces to be the explosive experts. And so you're expected to be able to shoot like the SF dudes or like the SEALs. You're expected to be able to be in the stack and understand your role as well as the explosive aspect.
Oh, okay.
So it felt more jack of all trades, and that really appealed to me.
Yeah. No, and that's an important aspect. Like the Ranger Regiment prides themselves on that too, is that our support personnel can pick up a rifle and get in a stack, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, if we're being honest, obviously they're not as proficient as the line guys, but at the same time, just having that overall SOP and that proficiency to be able to be integrated, man, that's cool. Like I remember in Afghanistan, we would take our cooks out on patrol. No other units are doing that.
For sure.
You know? And not only is that like, obviously it gives you a couple more personnel, but man, think about it from those guys' perspectives. Instead of just sitting on the fob, fucking flipping eggs or whatever, they get to actually go out and feel like a ranger.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, a little more pride.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot more purpose there. You know, might make the hard days in the kitchen a little easier to get.
Yeah. I always was kind of perplexed. It's like, man, like because the regiment is like, you can volunteer to be there from any MOS because or not any MOS, but a lot of MOSs. And it's like, dude, these dudes signed up to be cooks. And then they're like, I want to go to the Ranger Regiment. It's kind of crazy, but
good for them.
More power to you.
Yeah. 100%.
You know? So then you land on that, and obviously you just go through regular Navy boot camp like everybody.
Yeah. Painful.
Yeah. Painful.
Super painful. I actually gained, most people lose weight because it's just a daily regiment, right? I gained 20 pounds. I was in such good shape going into this thing that sitting around folding clothes, all that stuff. Dude, I gained 20 pounds in 8 weeks.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, I just got fat.
And again, that was 2013.
Yep.
So was that, I mean, the war was raging at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So was that, none of the bullshit, the wokeness and stuff had really started to infiltrate by that point, right?
No.
So you got the full military experience.
I did. Well,
Okay.
yes and no. So the training, the leadership, the dudes who mentored me, especially after selection, like those were the good old boys, if you will. Like those were the hard chargers, the guys who had been there and done the job that I was looking to do. So I got a lot of really good leadership up front. Years down the road, it started to change. So I don't consider myself unfortunate, but it's also kind of a little bit of a hiccup in my mind that I got to see what it could be like, and then I got to see what it turned into.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off. That made me really, really mad. And so later in my career, that played a big role in how everything shook out.
Yeah. And I'd like to get into that because
for sure.
that's an important aspect of what people should be considering if you want to go serve. I mean, owning a jiu-jitsu academy, I have a lot of young guys here that are young studs, and it's always in the back of their mind, like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it's like, I like having guys like you on that are current, that you can paint a picture of not even necessarily good or bad, but just what is.
Yeah.
And then they can make an informed decision. I know a lot of listeners, they still write me. It's like, hey man, I want to be a Ranger. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And it's like, man, as much as I would like to try and give you advice, I left the regiment in 2004, you know?
Right.
So it's like, I don't have much.
A little bit extended,
you know?
out of the loop.
So then after that, obviously you go into your specialty school. In the Navy, you call it a rate. Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Yep. Yeah, things change a little bit for whatever reason. The Navy does like the rank structures and even the verbiages. So most other places it's a MOS. We have an NEC. So we have some like weird isms in the Navy. But yeah, we go to A school was what it predominantly comes down to. Ours is just a selection pipeline. So after boot camp,
Oh, so once you're done with boot camp, even though like you signed up for that, they still have a selection process.
oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah. So I mean, you screen to get your contract to go to boot camp under the pretense that you're going to go through the selection pipeline.
I see.
So you're doing a PST up front. This is as a civilian, right? You might even have signed a piece of paper like you're in the delayed entry.
Yep.
But you do your PSTs and you have to hit minimum requirements physically in order to even earn the contract to go to boot camp for that.
Was the fitness test to get the contract a step down from what the actual fitness test is, or was it on par with it?
No, oh no, it's way above and beyond. You're talking like the big Navy fitness test?
No. I'm saying once you get to EOD selection, was it the same standards that you needed to get the contract?
Okay, so the PST to get the contract is more or less it's a what is it, 500-yard swim, push-ups for 2 minutes, sit-ups for 2 minutes, pull-ups on time for as many as you can do, and then a 1.5 mile run.
Okay,
And you have to hit minimum standards, and if you do really well, you can get picked up quicker.
got it.
So, but then once you get to the selection process, it's no holds barred.
I
So
see.
you still have to hit those. You still do like day one is always a PST of
Yep.
any new school because they just want to put you back in check. You know, you're still.
Well, that's always the PT test is the best tool for first impressions.
Yeah.
Because you show up and you can't meet the standard. That doesn't mean you're out of shape. That means you failed to fucking prepare.
Yeah.
Which tells a story about you.
Big time.
You know? What was the run standard for the 1.5 miles? Do you remember?
I think, well, there's like the minimum standard, which I believe is like 11:30 or 12.
Okay.
So it's pretty lax.
Got it.
But if you're competitive, you're in the low nines.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's, for some people, it's pretty hard to do. The run was never like my super strong suit. But
Well, bro, for people that are not watching on YouTube, you're what, fucking 6'5", 240 or something?
260.
260. Yeah. So I can imagine
But at
distance
that
running.
time, I was a little lighter. Right?
No, as soon as you walked in and shook my hand, I said, I'm glad we're podcasting, not doing jiu-jitsu today.
Yeah, when I was going through boot camp, like I said, I went in at 215, came out at like 235.
Okay.
So, and then kind of cut some of that fat back through selection because it's just grueling, like
Yeah.
physically demanding, right? So I would say 220, 225 was what I went through most of selection at.
That's a fucking gnarly, that's a gnarly fighting weight.
Oh, it was beautiful though. So if you're the smaller guy, you're expected to be up front. But if you're a bigger guy, you're expected to be towards the rear. So all you have to do as a bigger guy is really just not finish last. And you did well, right?
Got it.
Like
Yeah.
So you just got to beat one small guy and everyone's like, badass dude, right? Like,
Yeah.
So the stigma becomes that, which helps you out.
For sure, man.
But you also can't be a big ass because a big dude, it's hard to beat one small guy.
Yeah.
So I had that going for me most of the time.
How long was selection from start to finish?
It's just under 1.5 years.
Oh, so it's
And that's including the education process.
yeah,
too.
okay.
Yeah.
Do they have like an upfront kick your fucking dick in phase for a period of time?
Yeah, right out of boot camp, you go to preparatory course. And things have changed over the years. So what I'm speaking on is basically what I went through. I know it's similar, but you know, lots of things have changed since then. But you still go to preparatory course. And I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks for us. 3 weeks. Heavy in the pool, heavy running, heavy physical. It was the highest attrition of the entire pipeline happens in prep.
Just getting it done up front.
Yeah, they cut like 30 to 40% of the class just like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
And for people that aren't familiar, that's how most selections work.
Right.
Because it's like if you don't have the mental fortitude to hack the physical side of it, why invest in all the intellectual side of it?
Oh yeah, because that's millions of dollars the military spending on your education. They're teaching you a bunch of stuff that you're not going to even mentally be prepared to employ.
Yeah.
So yeah, they crush you up front.
So 3 weeks, majority of it in the pool. What else did that entail? Were you doing like log drills and all that shit?
It depends on the instructor staff. They had logs. We had it was down in Florida,
So,
right?
okay, so they can just be as creative as they want.
Oh yeah, which is awesome, but also that sucked.
Well, I'll tell you, not knowing what's going to happen is hugely advantageous to the cadre because, like, if every course is a cookie cutter course, inevitably people are going to know what to expect, and you don't want that.
Right. And at least in my experience, when it's Groundhog's Day over and over and over, even the cadre will get complacent, or the standards will gently get lower as you're like, dude, I'm so sick of doing this over and over and over. So if they get to switch it up on their own and do what they want to do, I feel like it keeps it fresh, and it also keeps the standards high, because they're like, yeah, fuck yeah, that's what we're doing today.
Yeah. I've told the story a lot on the podcast, but in my Ranger selection, obviously it's very, very physical, but they also start adding in a psychological aspect to it. And during log drills, it's like, hey, we're not done with log drills until we get 2 quitters.
Yeah.
And they're like, and listen, we know who you are already.
Yeah.
And if this isn't for you, do your Ranger buddies a favor and just bow out now. That way you're not putting them through 6 hours of exercise, and we can end this in the next 10 minutes, and then fuck, man, it works. There's some dudes that are like, oh yeah, that's me. You're talking to me. It's like, and I remember even thinking as a 19-year-old kid, man, like, dude, I would die before I would raise my hand and say, that's me.
Yeah.
And that's what they're looking for, obviously. But I wonder, fuck, where does that come from? Because I wasn't like a stellar athlete as a kid. I didn't do, I wrestled for a few years and did track for a few years, but I was never like, I don't know, man. But once I'd committed to do that, it's like, I can't.
Dude, it's a confidence thing. In my opinion, I think it's a pure confidence thing. Just judging myself throughout my life, like things I've failed at is when I was lacking the confidence to follow through. During those points in my life, I was like, no, this is what I'm doing. So when they were talking, it was like, well, they're not fucking talking to me. So I just tune that out.
Yeah.
So it's how your brain perceives this threat, right? Oh, if I'm talking to you, blanket statement to the whole class. And if you perceive that threat as they're talking to me, well, you got to lay down now.
Yeah.
Because you're already thinking, oh man, it's me. Right. But if
you're giving that voice power.
Right. Yeah. And that, dude, what is it? The boss voice and the bitch voice that Andy talks about? Dude, that's your bitch voice coming out loud and hot. And when you let that little sucker talk, it just culminates. And I watch people quit left and right because they would do the same thing to us in the pool. We're going to do this till someone quits, and, 1 or 2 more reps, and someone's like, I deal, they call it DOR, drop on request. And all you have to do is say DOR out loud. You're done.
Huh?
You get treated like a king, though.
Oh, I know that. Hey, come over, stand around the fire. We have hot coffee for you. Like, they want it to be as appealing as possible. Yeah. One thing that happened to me in high school was I wrestled junior high, and then the 9th and 10th grade, and then I quit. And I quit because I found girls and beer, and it was like, you know what, dude, I'm just gonna go fucking party and hang
better
out.
Things in life.
And then I reflected on that a couple years later, and I was like, fuck, man, you didn't see wrestling through. And that's a massive failure. And bro, I'm 44 now, and I'm still like, you motherfucker. Because, dude, I grapple every night. Like, I would have 2 more years of shoot and blast doubles. Like, it would have been good for me.
Yeah.
And I honestly think, though, that quitting something is what made me have that will to not quit, because I was disgusted with myself.
Sure.
And what's a worse feeling than looking at yourself in the mirror and feeling like you let yourself down? Yeah,
it was rough.
And so after that moment, and I'm kind of just tying this together as we're sitting here now, as probably one of the best decisions that I did, because it taught me what quitting felt like. And it feels fucking gross.
Yeah.
I tell the young guys all the time that want to go through a selection or want to join the Rangers or the SEALs, I'm like, listen, if you determine that the Ranger Regiment is not for you, quit at graduation.
Oh, damn.
Quit at graduation, right? Okay. Because that's what people do. They'll be like, they start to justify it in their head. They're like, well, I'm realizing that I just don't think this is the unit that I want to be a part of. And I don't think that this unit really, they come up with all these reasons, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then quit at graduation.
Right.
Because now you can really hold your head high and say, this unit isn't a good fit for me. But if you determine that this unit isn't a good fit for you, when you're holding a log over your head, it's 26 degrees out, pissing rain, and it's like, no. This has nothing to do with the unit.
You quit, dude.
This is your fucking heart,
For sure.
And so I'm always a proponent of that. Hey, quit at graduation. Guess what? You don't see people do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we had a saying, you quit at your next meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because you break it down when days are really, really tough, that, you're first thing in the morning, you're just getting your dick smashed in, and you're like, you know what? if I can make it to lunch, I'll make the decision at lunch.
Yeah.
And then when you sit down and you have a little bit of food in your belly and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to quit right now. No way. Life's good right now.
I like that, man. I've heard guys say I'll quit tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know,
same
that same
principle.
mindset,
Yeah.
but just breaking it down a little more incrementally.
Yeah.
So then 3 weeks of getting your shit pushed in.
Yep.
After that, do you have like a different level of respect? Cadre change things up a little bit, or is
No,
it?
because you transfer. So these are all different commands that you're going to. So that prep is still up in Great Lakes, and then you get transferred down to Florida to dive school.
Okay.
So it's a whole different cadre, still same pipeline, and they all know each other, right? But you go right back to day one every time you get there. So there's no respect that happens anywhere early on. It's not that they disrespect you, but you're just a student. And most likely, based on attrition rates, you're not going to make it anyways. So it's not like they're going to be your best friend. They have no need.
Yeah.
They're there for a selection process too. And it's not badge protecting, because a lot of people will call like, oh, you're just making kids fail because, you know, this, that, or the other. You kind of turn it into an arrogant thing, but you got to hold a standard.
Yes.
Right. You want your community to be held to a standard. Well, you have to hold people coming into your community to that standard.
Yep.
So that's what they're doing.
And I don't know if this applies to you guys, and I don't know if this is true for the regiment either, but this is what I've always heard. At the end of the day, the military has billets to fill, and they have a certain amount of people. And, you know, if the regiment's like, hey, we need 45 Rangers, I've heard that there's almost like a dial that they'll turn up or down on selection.
Sure.
Because, like, if there's 200 guys showing up and they only need 40, well, guess what that means?
Yeah. Game on.
You know, and that's, hey, and that is what it is. Right. And again, I've never worked selection, and I don't know if that might just be kind of like a regimental wives' tale. But no, you're right, man. Like, once you're in the unit, all the guys to your left and your right pride themselves on maintaining the standard that it needs to be part of that unit. And as soon as you let somebody in be like, oh, you know what? Like, I know he failed push-ups, but, and it's like, well, what's the next but?
Right.
And I saw it in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Like when I became a U.S. Marshal, I left the military, or I left contracting and went and became a Fed. And bro, that agency, like, tons of like lip service and pride, and we're the oldest federal agency, and we fucking arrest the most dangerous of the dangerous and all this stuff, right? And then you get down there and they have these standards in the books, but the standards aren't adhered to. So like on day one, I mean, bro, you know, like guys like us, I got in beast mode shape to go down there because I was like, dude, if I fail a run, I'm out.
Right.
And then I saw people failed every run and they weren't out. And I was like, oh, this is just a different world, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, as soon as you do that, it starts to really damage the culture overall.
And I took it personal.
You should, bro.
Because it also damages what my respect for my own badge, right? Like I earned something, it's on my chest. And so if everyone else is letting it slide, like how much is my badge worth now?
Yeah.
Right. And that kind of sucked. So I never wanted to devalue my own accomplishments by letting the community slip or let other people around me. And it happens. Like, I'm not going to say that I was perfect the whole time.
Of
I was
course,
just
bro.
a hard charging badass the whole time. Like, no. Like, I look back and I'm like, yeah, there's definitely times where the good old boy club, like, we're not going to do a PT test, and you write something down and turn it in. Right?
Yeah. But at the same time, like, you're doing that just because you're probably hungover and you're like, fuck, dude, I don't feel like doing it. Like, you're not doing it because you know that you're below the standard. Right.
And we had support personnel that would absolutely crush my soul because they're way below the standard. So difference between regiment and say like an EOD community, our support personnel are not screened. They're not like, they're just another billet. Right. And so
then it's like standard Navy standards.
Correct.
Okay.
And those people were failing standard Navy standards. But what happens in the good old boy club with, you know, you're passing PSTs, you're doing run swims, and you're doing all kinds of stuff on your own time. Whereas a command, these Navy standards, they start to become kind of a joke. And I know that sounds bad, but like the Navy standards are so low that, you know, any EOD you can pass them hungover.
Yeah.
Right. And so in a command, you have to be really careful about letting that whole stigma pass to everybody. Because if all the special operations guys are like, well, we're not going to do that. That's fucking a waste of time. We'd rather go do something else, or we got other training or whatever. So you pencil whip some shit, turn it in. Then these guys over here are getting fat and out of shape, but they're like, well, they pencil whip shit and just turn it in. And so they start doing it. And you watch people just slowly get like buttons are popping on their uniform and shit. And you're looking at them and you're like, there's no way you passed your body tape. Like,
Yeah.
we measured you and there's no way you passed. And somehow you've passed for the last 3 years in a row.
Yeah,
So,
everybody knows what's up, dude.
Yeah.
No, and the thing is, too, it's like you're not doing anybody a favor by letting them slide through the standard.
Yeah.
You know, like you might sell that story to yourself just because, like, well, I don't want this guy to face this or face that. But it's like, what are we here to do?
Right.
We're here to do something difficult and fucking dangerous.
Right.
And by letting the standards slide, you're actually making his job more difficult and more dangerous.
100%.
You know?
Yeah. And there was some weird protection. I mean, there's cultures. I don't know how it is in the Army necessarily, but at least in the Navy, when you get in like the E7 and above, you're considered khaki. And so there's like the khaki mess, the chief's mess. And that's a whole different like homie circle within the homies.
Okay.
Right? And so if there's a chief who's getting fat and overweight, all the junior enlisted are like, what the fuck, right? Looking at him like, no way. But somehow he doesn't. And I know it happens behind the scenes. The chiefs will kind of hound on this guy, like, dude, get your shit together, blah, blah, but you don't see it. And so there's definitely some weird physical finger pointing at times, right? Like I know it happens in other communities, but I definitely experienced it overall because people just, when you get a sense of accomplishment over time, if you don't keep fueling that fire, eventually you're like, oh man, you know, I hit my standards, I hit my wickets, especially once you make certain qualifications. It's real easy to just let it go because there's not really much later.
Got it.
So you can get to like your year, 10-ish, and then there's not a whole lot of carrots dangling in front of you being like, dude, you should do this, this, and this. And people start to kind of fade off.
I see.
Yeah.
So your actual unit has like just regular Navy support personnel in it. Mm-hmm. When you deploy and you're actually doing the job, who are you like boots on the ground out on the street with? Could that be literally anybody?
Literally anybody.
Just whoever you get attached to, huh?
Yeah. So my first deployment was with SEAL Team 17.
Okay.
We had a handful of EOD guys in South Korea as part of Special Operations Command Korea. So they call it SOC Corps. We were in South Korea doing partner training, advise and assist, just, your everyday chill deployment. SEAL Team 17 was out there. They're a reservist SEAL team, and then they get activated to come out. So there was an entire SEAL team out there, Task Force Trident.
How are their buttons looking on their uniforms?
Oh, dude, there's no,
Okay.
Even as reservists, there was no.
That's why I brought that up.
Yeah.
I don't think I even knew that there was reservist SEAL teams.
Yeah, there's two, East Coast and a West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah. They activated one of the West Coast teams, sent them out to Korea. They just happened to, our deployments lined up. I did a lot of work with those guys teaching maritime CQB and VBSS kind of stuff out there. So that was with the Frogs. Then my second team was with the Army.
Uh-huh.
And then I did work with some of the Air Force Bubbas. And then I was with the Marines for a little bit, 3rd Recon out of Okinawa.
Okay.
And then
fucking studs.
Yeah, they were awesome. That was
Recon dudes. I say it all the time on the podcast. Recon dudes, every Recon dude I ever worked with, fucking stud.
Yeah. They were fun. And one of my best memories with those guys. So we're sitting out on this tiny little island. It's called Farallon D Metanilla, FDM. And it's a bombing range. So we're using it for training. It's just littered with ordnance. So that's why I'm out there helping these guys. They're doing close air support. So they're calling in cast runs all night. We got all this stuff going on. It starts pissing rain. And this is out in the Pacific. So this is a different rain. This is like standing in a shower. We're standing there just miserable. And I was like kind of laughing to myself, looking around. I was like, God, I've kind of let the Navy soak in the EOD stigma a little pretty boy kind of. And I'm like, man, this is miserable, wet, tired, kind of hungry. And I look around and these recon dudes are just smiling. And they're so stoked. And I kind of chuckle. I'm like, what the fuck are you smiling at? And he's like, dude, we get to eat in 30 minutes. And that was just contagious. Everyone was like, who gives a shit about the rain? Who gives a shit about, like, we're calling in close air support and we got, MREs with heaters.
Yeah. Bro, it's
that.
Perspective, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that is one of the biggest life lessons from being part of a unit that just takes you out and does hard shit on the regular. Mm-hmm. It's like you start to realize, like, oh, feeling like absolute dog shit, it's just your physical body.
Yeah.
It shouldn't affect your mind.
Yeah.
And once you can distinguish the difference between that, exactly that. It's fucking freezing out. This sucks. And we can just laugh about it and have fun, dude.
It's medicine for the soul. Like, it doesn't feel like it then, but then when you realize what it did for you later,
Yes.
it's beautiful. It's so good for you.
Well, bro, and my whole platform is like talking about no one's coming to save you, microdose adversity, like embracing struggle, like all that shit that guys have kind of embraced from our different communities. Because once you embrace that, you start to see a massive amount of value in it. And it's like there's no way that you can become a disciplined, hard person, a capable person without enduring.
Right.
And like, I think a big mistake that a lot of people make in their mind is they think that endurance process has to be miserable. And it's like physically it can be miserable, but mentally you can kind of make that disconnect and be like, okay, this makes my lungs hurt. This makes my legs hurt, but my mind is just inside of this vehicle going for a ride.
Yeah.
And once you can start to do that, man, you become a motherfucker, you know?
Big time. It takes a little while to get there.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes some, every day waking up and being like, I don't want to do this today. But that's part of the ride.
Yeah.
Being able to be like, hey, don't hit snooze on your phone or your alarm clock or whatever, right? Get up out of bed, make your meal, get to the gym by the time you said you would get to the gym. These things, those start to create the mindset that allows you to, when it's cold, wet, rainy, and in everyday life, it comes in, people get a flat tire and their whole world collapses.
Yeah,
dude.
that's
And
right,
It's
dude.
like, dude, that's not a problem.
Just,
It's
fucking
just not.
fucking relax, you know?
So when you can set the precedence for yourself, life changes
Yeah.
big time.
No, I've tried to model that for my children. And it's funny too, because then there's other things that I will fly off the handle for, like a dude flipping you off or whatever, right? And it's like, it's funny. This podcast is almost like a documentary of my life because even a few years ago, I didn't have good control over that stuff. And I feel like, 44, I'm finally growing up, But no, I can't tell you how many situations I've been in with my family where it's like, you're out of the river and fucking the sun goes down, it starts pouring on us, and it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
It only matters if you allow it to matter.
Right.
And I kind of wish, that's why I have an ice plunge here. I tell all the guys all the time, sure, there's a physiological benefit that we can discuss, but at the end of the day, is your mind afraid of cold water? Because if it is, it's time to get control of that mind.
Yeah. For sure.
Did you guys do much water stuff or diving stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that was a big part of what you guys did, like mine work and whatnot?
Yeah, because that's kind of separates the Navy aside, and that's how we got the term special operations when most other EOD units are not.
Got it.
The other EOD units have the ability to, say, screen into their soft elements in their branches. Us inherently, when we get our badge in the Navy, we are considered soft.
Okay.
So,
he just got unhooked. He came out of his harness, dude. It's all good.
okay. He's probably just going to lay down.
Yeah. So when you, is part of the pipeline for everybody dive school then?
Yes.
Okay.
For Navy EOD, I guess.
Got it.
For convention, so for Army, Marine Corps, and all that, they don't go to dive school.
But for Navy, it is.
100%, yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Fuck, you guys are on boats, right?
Yeah, we start and end with water portions.
Is your dive school like the gnarly dive school? Because I hear there's different dive schools. I know the Army dive school is known for being a pretty gnarly course.
For sure. And I don't know much about the Army side. I know the Marines, the recon course uses the same Navy dive school that we do.
Okay, so that tells me everything I need to know. Like what, 50-meter underwater swim and like a bunch of like hard standards like that?
Oh, that's during PT.
Okay, that's just...
Yeah, and they do an entrance test, but you've already gone through prep at this point. You get down to dive school.
Dude, talk me through dive school. I'm kind of fascinated by it.
So dive school, the moment you show up, you're day one again. So remember, every time you're day one, you're just getting beat down. So the whole first week is pretty rough, pretty brutal. But dive school is still supposed to teach you dive medicine and dive physics first. Then they're going to teach you scuba diving, just basic underwater functioning. Then you get into rebreathers.
Okay.
And so we use the Mark 16 rebreather. And then that doesn't even really get you set up for the ordnance side of it. It's just a delivery vehicle to the problem. scuba diving or rebreather diving.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm an advanced open water diver just through PADI. I never did it in the military.
Sure.
But the rebreather stuff, if you make like bad gas calculations or wrong time management or time estimates, like it can get fucking dangerous, right?
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
Especially because when you're using rebreathers, traditionally you're going deeper.
Okay.
So our rebreathers go down to 300 feet.
No, thank you, bro.
Yeah. I've never been to 300. I've been to 200. So one of our qualification depths was 200 feet.
Fuck, dude.
And I did a rebreather dive to 200 feet. So
80 is my deepest, and that felt fucking deep, dude.
well, it also depends on where you are too. So you do it up here in the Northwest.
Yeah.
You could go 40 feet and you feel like you're 200.
Yeah, because it's fucking pitch black.
Yeah, and it's cold as shit, and there's nothing there. You can't even see your watch when you hold it up to your mask.
Dude, it's funny. A lot of people love diving Puget Sound.
Well, it's because of the sea life.
Yeah.
It's because of the way the tides work, and the temperatures are perfect for like anemones, octopus. I mean,
The
you
biggest
get all-
octopus in the world here.
Yeah, over by the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Yeah, that's it.
It's funny because I was into diving. I mean, I wasn't an avid diver, but I would dive every once in a while locally here. And then for our honeymoon, we went and dove the Great Barrier Reef.
Okay.
And we were in Australia for a while. I've never dove Washington since.
Yeah.
And that was like, what, fucking 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But it just kind of ruined it for me. I was like,
time.
oh, this is diving. you
And I
know?
spent years out in Guam.
Oh, okay.
And so the diving out there, it's hard to, I mean, it is diving, right? But when you compare it to like the Northwest or many other places in the world, it's cake. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Reefs, crystal clear water. I mean, you can see 50 feet on a bad day.
And also, like, you're in a pair of board shorts
yes.
instead of a
Ranger panties, dude.
a 7 mil wetsuit.
Yeah, we call them silkies, but Ranger panties. for
Yeah.
you, right? Yeah, that was all we're wearing.
Bro, that's rad, dude.
Yeah.
Getting paid to do that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So we enjoyed that. But dive school in Florida, for whatever reason, I was a winter class through all of my water evolutions.
Okay.
That's just the way it lined up. So it was cold as shit. We were in the first class. We did a timed bay swim, and we did it, and everyone's coming out just absolutely jackhammering. And the recon class after us had a kid hype out.
Oh, shit.
And so the CO mandatory wetsuits from then on. So literally from, I think it was day 2 or day 3, for the rest of dive school was mandatory wetsuits because it was so cold. Even in Florida, I mean.
And were you guys happy about that, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Because you're more buoyant, too.
More buoyant.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword because for me, I run really hot.
Oh,
and so
okay. I see.
If I'm just standard diving, love a wetsuit.
But if you're
especially
PTing.
when you're PTing, dude, I actually got too hot. I actually started falling out on one of the evolutions. And I couldn't figure out why they were singling me out. And it was because I was just acting stupid. I was so damn hot.
Who would think about that, becoming a heat casualty in cold water?
Right. Yeah, they had pulled us out on the boat ramp. We had our fins on our hands. We're doing all kinds of calisthenics and push-ups and burpees and all these things. And pretty soon I'm kind of wobbling. And they're like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm perfect. And they're like, no, you're not, right?
No, I am, I promise.
Yeah, so I actually got stripped out of my wetsuit and put in a tank. And they were like, dude, there's steam pouring out of your body. And, a couple minutes in the warmer water or the lukewarm water kind of brought me back. And I was like, oh, shit, that was bad. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I was a dizzy guy for a minute.
You ever have any crazy run-ins with wildlife?
Ironically, yes.
'Cause, bro, I mean, I had a guy on who was a Navy diver that lost his fucking leg.
Oh, shit.
During, his name is Paul de Gelder, Australian Navy diver.
I think I know this story.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Arm and a leg.
Yeah.
From a bull shark.
Yep.
And it's like, fuck, man. Diving is one thing because you can kind of have an awareness.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. If a sea monster wants to rip you apart, you don't have any say in what's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just the awareness seems like, for me, it gives me a little bit of a peace of mind. But like doing surface stuff where you're just PTing, you have no idea what's going on under you. I don't.
Gets a little eerie for you.
No, thank you, dude. I did one dive on the Great Barrier Reef in the night.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, thank you.
Well, granted, Great Barrier is way different. So when you're out in Guam, there are bull sharks. I think there's even some hammerheads here and there, but it's very rare, and there's no recorded shark attacks in history. So you're very safe out there. Florida, a little bit different, but where we're at, I've never heard of an actual incident with animals. You run into them here and there. We ran into a manatee. That was kind of trippy underwater because it's not great visibility in the little bayou we're at. And there's a manatee down there, and you're like, what the, like, no clue what it is.
Yeah.
It's just an underwater
A giant motherfucker.
Yeah. That got a little, makes your butthole pucker. Like, you're go, fuck, And I had a run in with a shark out in Guam. They call them Bostons.
Okay.
There's a longer name for it, but it was like a 12-foot long shark. We had just kicked a boat out of a plane and then free falled in after it. So it was just water operations, all training. We're unrolling the boat and there's a safety boat there, right? Going in circles and everyone starts screaming, "Hey, get out of the water, get out of the water." And so we pull everyone out of the water and this dorsal fin just, and we're like, oh shit, right? So like, we're going to be the first shark bites in fucking history.
I thought there's never been an attack here. Well,
right? And the shitty thing about the boat is the way it's all wrapped up. It's, a roll duck. And so you have to cut the straps, but the cut points, because of the way it's packaged to sit in the plane, are on the bottom.
okay, so you got to go under the water.
Got to go underwater. And so the safety boat picks up everybody, but we still got to cut these straps because we still have to get this damn boat back to base.
Were you fucking rock, paper, scissors? Or who's going
More or
in?
less. But we all just kind of did that look at each other. And I was like, fuck it, I'll do it. Like, just someone give me your dive knife so I can cut these things. And I go underwater and I'm cutting it. Next thing you know, I'm getting ripped out of the water. Like, they're pulling me by my head and my neck and just pulling me out. They're like, the shark's back. And I still had like 3 more things to cut. So we wait a minute and I'm like, fuck it, I'll just go back down. Back down, hit that second one. I'm reaching for the last one and something told me, like, just in my body, I was like, uh-oh, something's wrong. And I turn around, damn thing is like me to you right now, coming right at me. And I had my dive knife, so the only thing I could do is like think that is just to hit it in the face with my knife. And it was a blunt tip knife, like a prying dive knife.
Yeah.
And it just hit it in the face and it swam off, right? And I was a little shaken up, but I cut that last strap, get the fuck out of the water, and just absolute rocket propel myself back onto the boat. And I was like, oh, guys, and like,
I just stabbed him.
Yeah, I just fucking hit a shark in the face, right? And we get back to the command, and I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, you all right? We heard you got attacked by a shark. And I'm like, no, I didn't get attacked. I just, a little confrontation. A couple hours later, I get a call from my CO, my commanding officer, and he's just like, hey man, I'm coming to the hospital to see you.
Dude, isn't that, bro? It's like the fucking game of telephone, dude.
And I was like sitting in my house having a beer, and I'm like, what? And he's like, I heard you got attacked by a shark. How you holding up, brother? Trying to be motivational.
So bring your Purple Heart.
Yeah, right. And I was like, no, none of that is true. Like, here's what happened. He starts laughing his ass off, and get to work the next day, and the guys are chuckling, and one of the E8s, one of the senior chiefs, he dubbed me Shark Bait. And so for a couple of weeks that stuck, so everyone just called me Shark Bait.
That's hilarious.
It was not, it was an interesting experience, but it got blown so much that the real life story was pretty like insignificant compared to how blown it.
Isn't that how it usually goes though?
Yeah, for sure.
That's hilarious, dude. So when you get done with dive school, because I want to go back to the pipeline now.
Yeah.
Is that early on in the pipeline, or is that?
Yeah, you're only a couple months in.
Okay.
You're like 2 done. Yeah.
And is your
2
dive
months
school
in.
3 weeks ish?
I'm having a hard time remembering exactly. I want to say it's like 4 or 5 weeks.
Oh, okay. A little longer then.
Yeah, because we throw in the rebreather.
That's
stuff.
right. Yeah.
So it's longer than your normal like recon school or army school.
Did you guys have a just like a breath hold standard that had to be met? Like
There was no like breath hold time.
Okay.
We had like underwater swims that had to be met, but breath holds are actually not authorized in the Navy. So breath hold diving, you can't do that because it's a really good way to shallow water black out.
Yeah.
And so you're never supposed to do breath holds ever.
Okay, that's
According
interesting.
to the dive manual, right? So
I got a buddy who lives on Maui, and his sons grew up on the island, and they've been spearfishing since they could walk.
oh yeah.
And Matt can do a 5-minute breath hold and just disappear into the depths below.
It's wild.
And a couple minutes later comes up with fish.
Dude.
And it's like, what the fuck, dude?
I got respect for those guys. I'm the exact opposite of breath hold.
Oh, dude, yeah, being a fucking giant motherfucker.
Dude, I just process oxygen way too fucking fast. So I'll get down to like 20 feet and be like, that's deep enough. And so I've never been good at spearfishing. There's guys in the community though that grew up like surfing and spearfishing, kind of, like your buddies did. And Guam was a good spot. There were some honey holes that they loved that shit.
Oh, I bet, dude.
But as far as like military goes, that's completely like no go.
Have you fucking watched the dudes that'll, I don't even know what it's called, but they just basically fucking swim down the line on a breath hold to see how far they can go?
Those dudes are nuts.
Gnarly, man.
And I get the challenge. I understand like the the desire for that. I just don't put myself in, like, that's not how I would channel that energy. Like, why the fuck would you go that deep in water?
Well, and if you watch the most competitive of those guys and gals, there's fucking savage females that do that.
Big time.
Bro, to learn their absolute maximum capacity, they start blacking out. They have like a support team meet them on the way up. I think it's like 50 feet underwater to guide them for the last 50 feet. And they pass out with like 10, 12 feet left regularly.
Yep.
And that's where they hone that their absolute maximum capacity.
Yeah.
And bro, can you imagine like fucking swimming to the surface and being like, I'm not going to make this one. No, thank you, dude.
Yeah. That ain't for me.
Also, another fascinating aspect of the breath hold community, the dudes that hyperventilate on oxygen and then do maximum breath holds after that, 22 minutes, man. You seen those guys?
That's like the David Blaine trick, you know, the crazy shit. I've never actually looked into that, but I've heard of, you know, how people do those astronomical breath holds.
Yeah, they do. They just do gnarly hyperventilation
Just
with
O2 saturation.
pure O2.
That's crazy.
And it's like, it's gnarly, man.
Because you can get O2 toxicity.
Can you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the dive-related disorders that you can get. It happens more so at depth, right? Because the pressure on your body is pushing it into your actual cells.
Okay.
So, but I don't know. Just breathing pure O2 and hyperventilating doesn't sound like a good idea. I like my 21%, dude.
Yeah. Man, that's funny, dude. So then you talked about doing free fall. So, I mean, you guys get to do all the cool shit, huh?
Literally all of it.
When is regular Fort Benning Army Airborne School then part of your pipeline, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Okay. And when that was part of our pipeline, that was basically like a vacation.
Oh, that was another painful one for me.
Oh, was it? Just because you're fucking
kind
shuffling around constantly or what?
So,
or you're just talking about the actual jumping aspect being a giant?
No. So, well, yeah, that aspect too, for sure. You don't hit the ground soft no matter who you are.
That's right.
You add 100 pounds and it hurts. But the painful part was so that's kind of when you get a little bit of the respect, because for us, that's right after you graduate. So
okay. So it's not part of the pipeline. It's like, hey, you made it.
It is, but it's not part of. It's hard to explain. So you get your PIN, but then you're required to go to that school.
I see.
So it's part of your pipeline before you get to your first unit, but it's not required to get your PIN.
Selection.
So it's not part of. Yes, correct.
Okay.
So it's not part of selection, but it is part of the pipeline before you can get operational at your first unit.
I see. Because I mean, based on everything you've just said, there's nobody that could endure all that and then not hack it at Fort Benning Army Airborne School.
That's why it's painful.
Yeah.
Because you end up, so after dive school, you go through about a year of educational problems, I guess, a process. And that's all you learn about ordnance. That's where the EOD side of things, the foundation gets laid. And you're not coming out of this with like a master's degree in explosives. You're coming out of this proving I understand the basics and I can build off that.
Okay.
So it's still about a year long, but it's still really rigorous academically. So there's a little bit of physicality that, and especially up front, because you're a new guy at a new school. So get smashed. Then there's a little bit throughout, but then you start to self PT and then the academics kicks in. So you do a year of that. You're being tested once, if not twice a week. If you fail any of these tests, you get a retest. If you fail that, you go to a review board and they can decide whether you stay in the pipeline or not. So, and it's 85% is a pass.
Okay.
So 84 or lower, you're done. That's
got it.
So the standards go up, the chances get slimmer. You're just expected to, and if you get behind, they don't stop the curriculum for you. You know what I mean? So if you have to study for a retest, you still have to study for the next test too.
Got it. So it behooves you to stay up to speed on things.
Big time. And it's impossible to fall too far back, maybe a day or two before you're either rolled out of your class or dropped from training.
I see.
So, but yeah, once you get through that and you get your PIN, so that's when you graduate at the end of EOD school. The surface elements, they all graduate at the end of I think it's nuke divisions is the last division. So when you go through all your nuclear training, EOD, so the Navy EOD stays in another division and goes to underwater. Like I said, it starts and ends with water.
Got it.
So we go to an underwater. So we watch all of our buddies who, roll in and out of classes because it's a joint school. So all the branches go to the same school. It's a Navy school, but all branches go there.
Okay.
So you might have Marines, you might have Army people, you have Air Force people, all in your class. Depends on how things roll out with shaking, with rolling and everything. So if you have surface people, they graduate. You watch them get their pins, and then you have, I think, 6 more weeks of underwater. Well, underwater is now new school, kind of, but it's back to selection. So it sucks again for a good couple weeks.
Yeah.
But then you're really, that's when you're learning the dive vessel that you took in Florida. Now you're applying it to the underwater mine aspects that you've learned with all the demolition procedures.
Wow.
So now
you're doing like
combining
sub exits and shit like that too?
You don't do sub exits. That's,
okay.
So that's pretty much predominantly SDVs, so the SEAL delivery vehicles.
Got it.
Some of the divers help with those, and I've had the chance to work on subs in wet dock, but I don't know too many of the guys that have actually gone out and done the SDV jobs as EOD techs.
Good, right?
Yeah, right.
I've heard submarine crews are fucking weirdos, dude. Sorry if you're on a sub crew.
Here's bubbleheads.
Yeah. I haven't heard good things about sub crews. I mean, think about it. We talk about like walking into your recruiter and being like, I want to be putting a metal tube at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, with minimal space.
For fucking sometimes up to months at a time,
yeah.
dude. Months at a time.
I have a good friend who's the chief of a boat, and I got a pretty, secondhand right through talking to him, like a snapshot of what it's like on a submarine. And he's kind of happy-go-lucky. He's like, oh, no, it's not that bad. It's cool. We do this cool thing. And he's talking about, to me, I'm like, that's some weird nerd shit. I couldn't live that life.
Well, and all the, all the Navy jokes, like 100 sailors go out and 50 couples come back. Yeah. I've heard on subs, it's even a little weirder sometimes.
I've actually never been on a sub, not even like a tour at dock. I've never been inside the actual sub. I've actually been in the ballast tanks of a sub. I mean,
which I don't even know what that is.
So it's just a massive tank they fill with water or air, right? It
to
creates
buoyancy. Okay,
right?
Yeah.
So I've been inside one of those to help the divers with a project they were working on, and I was just assisting as another diver. And that's the only time I've been in a sub. So I've actually never physically been in the human compartment. I've been in the water compartment.
Do they have a height restriction on subs? I bet they do. Huh?
I don't think so.
I've heard of some. You're fucking big ass in one of those things. You'd probably be like.
And I've heard some horror stories, like when they initially go underway, there's not enough storage, so they actually line the floors with cans. So it's like little pallet flats of cans.
Oh, so
and so it reduces like another 4 or 5 inches of walking space. So I'm sure those dudes got some scoliosis or some spine problems fucking going on, man.
Probably helping them get their 100% with their VA disability.
And when I look at jobs that I'm like, I don't want to do that, I have respect for that, because I don't want to do that. So if someone needs to do that. So when they come out and they're like, no, I'm fucked up from being on a sub for whatever years, I'm like, good for you. I hope you get your rating, dude.
Or they're fucking all like hot racking, right? Yeah. Like they share a bunk with multiple other guys.
Oh, there's no personal space.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've never been on there, so I'm imagining, right?
Yeah.
But I've been on ships for small periods, and ships are glorified. Like that's a lot of space compared to how much a sub has. And that was rough.
Got it.
So I don't know. I would love to talk to them, but they always seem to be a little bit more chipper about it. They're like, oh, it's not that bad.
Why do you like it so much? Everybody in the military bitches about their job, and you guys love this. What's going on? Do you ever work with marine mammals in EOD?
So there is a marine mammal program. I never was a part of any of that, though.
Okay.
It definitely phased out a little bit because robots took over.
I see.
So the mammal program, they were trained dolphins and sea lions.
And didn't they even have an orca or something at some point, or was it always dolphin?
I've never heard about orca. That'd be wild.
Okay.
Yeah, Shamu out there fucking finding fucking sea mines.
Well, bro, when I first heard about that, and we had a guy that we worked with overseas in contracting that was part of the Navy. I don't even know what you call it. They're mammal.
It's called the mammal program.
It's the mammal program?
Yeah, I think it's called like the...
We called him Mammal. That was his call sign. So that makes sense, dude. And I was like, fuck, dude, you seriously have fucking dolphins that can go and place mines on boats? He's like, yes.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, that sounds like some fucking James Bond shit. Well, it is. It is,
Yeah. And to my understanding is they were very proficient. And they also worked for like harbor security.
Yes.
So, dude, they would dress up swimmers in these padded suits, like dudes in fins and masks and all that shit, and have them
try and infiltrate down in San Diego and shit. I've heard that.
And these dolphins, these bottlenose dolphins,
fucking
would fuck them up. Yeah,
it's like a bite suit for a Malinois, right?
Yeah.
Because dude, dolphins can kill sharks with like their nose, just blunt force, wham, hitting them in like. They'll target specific organs.
Yeah,
because they're like as smart as we are.
Smart,
you know.
Yeah.
Man, isn't that nuts, dude?
And the Navy utilized them for a while, but now autonomous stuff, you know.
Yeah. Well, and also it's SeaWorld is not cool anymore.
Yeah.
keeping apex predators in swimming pools is like kind of rubs people the wrong way.
Persona non grata nowadays.
And bro, the older I get, I always joke I'm becoming more and more like tree hugging hippie. Like, think about that, bro. Keeping an orca in a swimming pool for 30 years. That's fucking dark.
Yeah.
And then that thing starts eating people, and you're like, I wonder why he would be upset.
Right.
You know, it's like one of the most majestic beasts on the planet Earth, and you put it in a swimming pool and make it do flips for a herring. What could possibly go wrong, you know? And I think about like, fuck, man, when I was 6 or 10 or whatever it was, my parents took me down to SeaWorld, and you're sitting in the splash zone. And bro, back in the 80s, no one even considered that this might be a bad idea.
Right.
You know?
The inhumane. It never crossed anyone's mind.
It's like, that's a fish in a fucking pool. Like,
It's too busy just enjoying it.
you
Like,
know?
wow.
And then that show Blackfish came out, and it's like, and now I'm to the point where it's like, dude, really any animal in a zoo. What do we have a gorilla in a zoo for? It's like, that's kind of dark, man.
Oh,
it's
I
just
agree.
imprisoning these
I
things.
agree. My wife loves going to the zoo. I'm not a huge fan just because I look at the animals and they're cool to see, but what are we doing to that damn
What are
animal?
we doing?
Why is it even here? You know? And there's some cool aspects of it, and I have to tell myself this to try to enjoy the zoo with my wife. But when they're doing like rehabilitation stuff for the
Of
animals,
course, yeah.
you know, there's some cool aspects. But when it's like this was born in captivity and it's lived here its whole life, I'm looking at it like, damn, dude, you got some instincts you don't even understand.
And also, bro, if it's an alligator in a giant enclosure and they throw a pig in every fucking 3 days, it's like that alligator's happy, right?
Yeah.
But when you see like a giant majestic beast like a fucking rhinoceros or a tiger, and it's kind of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
You know? And it's funny, again, the older that I get, the more I just start to reflect on these things. And bro, this year, I just posted on my Instagram, I was like, we're not cutting a Christmas tree down this year. Why are we going to go cut a tree down to burn it 3 weeks later? So there's one nursery here in Snohomish County that sells potted living Christmas trees.
Oh, cool.
And I said, we're going to go get a potted living tree. And then we have 30 acres out in the mountains in Granite Falls.
I'll just go plant it later.
And that's what we've already done.
Nice.
And I went and planted it, and now it's like I've already been out there a couple times. Like, hey, there was this year's Christmas tree,
That's pretty cool.
you know, and it just, I don't know, it feels good.
You're getting nostalgic or like,
Yeah, dude, and that's what I said. I said 20 years from now, if I make it that long, we'll have a row of 20 fucking trees, and my kids can be like, that's almost like a little reflection, you know. I think that's neat, man.
It is neat.
You want to hear something that's bizarre about it? Is I said, hey, you know what? Let's not cut a Christmas tree down every year. Let's have like, I know I'm getting hippie and woo woo in my old age, but just respect for life. And don't get me wrong, if I have to cut a tree down to build a house or something, we'll cut the fucking tree down. But just to cut it down for no reason, I was like, it doesn't make sense to me anymore. So let's just, out of respect for fucking nature and life, let's go buy a living tree. So bro, I go to this nursery. The fucking dude that sold it to me was this guy who's probably 68 years old, and he's looking at me, and he's like, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you from? And then it hit, and it clicked, and he started tearing up. Bro, I resuscitated this guy 5 years ago. He collapsed in the SeaTac airport with a heart attack.
Oh, shit.
And I fucking CPR'd him, and we hooked an AED on him and zapped him back to life. And I've only done that one time in my whole life.
And this is the dude selling you a tree.
And there he is working at the nursery and sold me that tree.
Dang.
And I was like, bro, I decide to kind of like celebrate life a little differently.
Yeah.
And you're the guy here?
Are you a religious guy?
I am, I'm an everything guy.
Okay.
I'm very spiritual.
Okay.
I don't fall into one religious category.
Sure.
But, no, man, the older I get too, the more spiritual I start to find myself.
Yeah.
And I do.
To me, I'm like, yeah, God's talking to you.
You know, you're
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
100%. I do believe God's talking to me.
Yeah.
There was and he said the same thing, you know? And it's just fucking strange that's the universe,
Yeah, man.
you know? But fuck, bro, I talk about me all the time on the show. We're here to talk about you.
Well, I feel like I could just talk for days. So it's,
Bro,
it's nice to have a back and forth.
Dude, I like, typically the guys that I find myself sitting down at this table with, we sit down at this table because we have good vibes. Like if Lappin says, hey, bro, Jeff's fucking cool, man. Like I knew it would be like this.
For sure.
Every once in a while, it's kind of like, oh, fucking crickets. And it'd be like, all right, well, it's an hour and 4 minutes. We can go ahead and wrap.
Finish your drinks. That's last call, dude.
Another thing that I think would be interesting to hear about is the actual demo side
Sure.
of going through that. Because you mentioned it, you said it, all boys want to fucking blow things up.
Yeah, man.
Like when I get to fucking make my own charges out of C4 and blow the locks off this door. Like as a young ranger, that was always exciting, you know?
time.
And is that kind of how your demo school works? Like do you build like flex linears and lockbusters or anything like that?
So you don't get into breaching so much.
Okay.
Breaching is like a follow-on school.
I figured breaching seems like the simplest aspects of explosives.
I would beg to differ.
Oh, would you? Okay.
Yeah, because breaching, it starts to get more technical. Like, what effect do you want? Do you just want to blow the door off the hinges? Anyone can do that, right? But if you want to blow it off in a certain way, or if it's a certain type of door, if you want it to blow the lock but swing open, do you want that? I mean, you can...
Yeah, with like water charges or ECT and all that stuff.
All of that. And then, you're doing a box design, you're doing an X design, you're doing a single line, you have
Bro, we
options.
had one breach called a Ranger wall breach. And it was an E-type silhouette with 6 full sticks of C4 on it.
Oh, fuck.
And you literally just prop it.
That's for the compound wall.
Yeah, we're not looking to fucking... go through a door. We're making a door.
Yeah, dude.
And I never got to use one of those in real life. So, bro, as a ranger, I actually we did a lot of real world operations in Afghanistan, but we never got like into the shit, I kept thinking like, when is it going to be my turn to the big show?
Yeah.
So we never did like live breaching and stuff like that. It just, how it is. It's the battle space dictates your tactics.
Right.
And it was just fucking where we were way up in Barry Cout. It was usually pretty chill up there.
Gotcha.
But, so then obviously I guess that makes sense. You guys wouldn't get into breaching.
Yeah.
So
it's
then what
like
would...
basic fundamentals.
Okay.
So it's like, hey, this is a stick of C4, right? Very simple, but when someone hands you a stick of C4 for the first time, you're like, whoa.
Of course, bro.
Like, because you see all these movies and you have these preconceived notions about what this means and how big it booms and all this kind of stuff. And so you look at explosives like magic and they hand it to you and you're like, don't drop it. Right. And in reality, you can huck that stick of C4 anywhere you can throw that shit. People light them on fire and use them as can stoves and shit.
Yep.
Like very, very safe, stable explosives. Right. But in demo school, they're giving you det cord caps, electric caps and non-electric, and C4. And then I think we did some dynamite and some TNT. So the very stable, staple aspects of demolition. Like we didn't even get into like C2s and all the specialty charges. Flex linear we did a little bit later. When you're opening up bombs, you can put flex linear on it and kind of either crack it open or burn it out. You can use magnesium strips and it'll actually ignite and burn out the explosives. And there's different techniques for that. But the demo side is very just, you're going to build this chart and it's a schoolhouse. So you have X amount of det cord and you have like a checklist of like, do this, punch your C4, put your cap on, do this, do that, and then you're holding your C4 and you have your cap and your time train or whatever. And you're walking down range looking like Frankenstein. You got your hands out, keep them away from your body, point it away from you, your safety glasses on. So looking back, you're kind of a fucking nerd, but it's the very basics. It's teaching you respect for explosives.
Yeah.
So there's not a huge education process when it comes to that. Like it is in the sense of, what you're working with, but it's just giving you an introduction. Like I said, most of school is like a foundational purpose. So it doesn't make you, it'll give you the knowledge to become proficient at explosives, but you are in no way, shape or form. Like you're not just going to go walk out onto a demo range and be like, hey, let me take charge. Here's what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. Like you don't have near enough experience coming out of school.
Got it. Is there follow-on schools then that like build a much higher level of proficiency?
Always.
Because I mean, EOD,
yeah,
explosive ordnance detection, right?
disposal.
My bad.
Yeah.
To understand how to dispose them, it seems like it would require subject matter expert level knowledge.
Right. And a lot of that comes with, OJT, kind of
okay.
like on the job training. You learn from the dudes in front of you.
Got it. And people don't realize, like, because people think you show up to whatever, it doesn't matter. Insert fucking Green Beret, Ranger, SEAL, like the pipeline, you show up an operator, and it's like, I just started cutting my teeth.
Right.
Like you show up and you don't know fuck all. and the crazy thing is, you might be deployed 2 months later.
And this didn't happen to me, right? Like I wasn't one of those guys, but the guys that I looked up to and the guys who ended up being my mentors and the leaders for me personally in my community, those were dudes who, when they showed up, that's what happened. They show up right out of school. And there's some weird stuff. So I actually recorded a podcast with a good friend, the guy who put me in and told me what EOD was. His name's Ben Umayim, and retired now, but he has a very colorful career. He showed up right out of school. They throw him on a deployment. He goes straight overseas, straight to CENTCOM, and he's with his chief and officer who all have no EOD experience, none of them, because it was that time. Like there was nothing going on where these guys gained large amounts of experience. After his first deployment, he was one of the most seasoned dudes at his entire unit, right? And he's fresh out of school. So
some of the old guys are probably like, ugh.
Oh yeah.
Because like I remember when we started getting combat rotations, there was a handful of old Rangers that like jumped into Panama, or like one guy that was still around that jumped into Grenada. Cool. And you could always, I mean, no one ever came out and said it, but the guys had a couple combat rotations in either Grenada or Panama, or a handful of guys that were also in Mogadishu. Mm-hmm. Man, that was like, they kind of rested on those allocates at times.
Yeah.
I remember my first sergeant one of his friends, I've seen the elephant. And it's like, okay, you jumped into Panama. You do a rotation in Ramadi, no one's impressed by Panama anymore.
Yeah. The game has stepped up a little bit, man.
Yeah.
So some of the older guys, I mean, their level of education, where mine was on the job training, theirs was don't die.
Yeah.
And you're also looking at, I mean, one of the biggest things that came out of OIF, OEF, so this GWAT era, was IEDs.
Yes.
So the EOD guys just got brutalized, man.
Bro, I can't, and that's anytime people tell me they're interested in IED or EOD, because that was, I mean, I was in Afghanistan 02, 03, so it was pretty early on. They weren't
not quite as heavy.
Weren't sophisticated yet.
Right.
And then I was in Ramadi, Iraq 04, 05.
Yeah.
And they were starting to come together, man. And I mean, fuck, now it's drone IEDs. I want nothing to do with that shit, dude.
Yeah, drones. Yeah.
Fuck that. But bro, even watching where IEDs started to where they were 05, 06, man, like the learning curve was steep.
Oh, dude.
And I can't imagine for you guys like what that was like.
Because you got to stay fresh on all the TTPs the enemies are using.
Yep.
Your goal is to stay a step ahead, and it's never that way.
Well, bro, and I remember in Iraq, it was like, hey, a box of apples is on the side of the road, so fuck, dude, swerve to the other side. And then they'd put a box of apples on one side and a dead dog on the other side. Yeah. And now the dead dog's the IED, and it's like, dude. Or then they started burying them, or then they started doing linear ones like across the whole roadway. And it's just, as we would react and adjust our TTPs, the enemy would too. And that, when I talk about this, I think it's important because people think the people that we were fighting are just these stupid cave people. No. They were in like fucking, they were able to fucking really push the, like, just always evolving, always changing their TTPs, and they were innovative, man.
Oh, dude. And that's a great point, because the evolution of IEDs is something that's almost astounding, right? Because you kind of look at, especially in CENTCOM, you look at these guys as uneducated or, sand dwellers and all these different, negative connotations. They went from, like you said, roadsides with pressure plates, which are just an easy, two pieces of metal that when you drive over or step on it, it connects the circuit, right? Very, very simple shit. We're talking like photocell sensors. We're talking HOPE RF frequencies that, we're talking, non-magnetic stuff that you can't find with your metal detectors, the stuff they would end up coming up with. I mean, these are like scientists, people making explosive shit that's trying to kill you.
Yeah.
It was no joke.
And then a bunch of different ways to initiate them.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to be kind of jealous because it's like, man, imagine if we got to just
take the gloves off,
indiscriminately fucking be offensive against our enemy in the most creative way possible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They do whatever the fuck they want, man.
Yeah. And there are certain programs that leaned that way pretty heavy. Not within conventional side, but you get into 3-letter agencies and they were able to play around a
for
little
sure.
bit.
Yep.
And which made me happy. You know, maybe that sounds a little cold-hearted, but when your friends and the people you know are being targeted by very specific stuff that you're like, dude, if I implemented this back, I would fuck you up, because my level of education has to be superior than the enemy. So we're always in schools, we're always training, we're always looking for the term is what can kill me now.
Yeah.
And that's always it's used in many, many different ways. But if you think that you have something mastered, stop, take a deep breath and be like, what's next? What can kill me now? Right? Because you're not mastered. They're just, you just don't know what you don't know.
Bro, that's jujitsu.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I always tell our listeners I have to reference jujitsu at least once per episode because it's my whole life, right?
Yeah.
But no, isn't that the truth? It's always
100%.
evolving. Mm-hmm. There's always somebody better. Mm-hmm. And it's the second you think you got this thing figured out, someone lets you know you don't know shit.
Well, the best part is when you get so advanced in your skills that someone kills you with something rudimentary.
Oh, yeah, bro. Jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's
like
hey,
you get up here,
I'm
you're
so
rolling.
advanced.
Yep.
I got all these crisp, high-level techniques that nobody understands. And
rear naked choke.
Yeah, exactly. You just hit me with a day one move, bro. Yeah. No, it's fucking jiu-jitsu mirrors life, dude.
Yeah, 100%.
I love that. Are you familiar then with kind of the evolution of IEDs from when they came on the scene back in the early GWAT?
I would say yes.
Okay,
but
that'd be interesting to kind of talk through just kind of your knowledge on that, because I mean, fuck, bro, that was I think if you look statistically at the most casualties, mm-hmm. those were mm-hmm. our biggest fucking adversaries,
big time, and things got absolutely crazy because you start and. I was thinking about it on the way here, the ability to actually track certain people because of their style of how they make things became apparent. So people were building target packages or at least funneling intel, being like, hey, this guy makes everything with certain techniques the exact same. So you could start packaging together. You have 100 IEDs laid out and you're like, these 5 were made by the same guy. Right, because
so they just have almost a signature to how they construct things.
Well, and things get crazy. It goes really, really deep. So I'm trying to answer the question, but I might just ramble on.
Ramble, bro.
So
I told you the SD card has 12 hours. So our wives be like, "Where the fuck are you guys at?"
Yeah, right. But I mean, like I said, it starts super rudimentary, right? Routine circuit. You have your explosives, your initiator, your power source, and your switch. Right. So there's your fundamentals, right? And then depending on what your explosives are in, your packaging, right? So people were taking conventional ordnance, throwing a cap in the nose well. You have a 9-volt battery or some sort of proficient battery, and then a pressure plate. Very rudimentary, very easy to make. Any child can make that if you show them how.
And also indiscriminate.
Right.
Whoever steps on that is getting the business.
Right. And so, yeah. And then targeting becomes a huge determination of how they make it, right?
Yeah.
So early on, because it was just, hey, it became word of mouth early on. And the classic story, you're driving down the road and you see no people.
Yep.
That's because people knew that they had set some bullshit out. And that was a huge indicator, huge red flag, like, stop. Whatever we're doing right now, something's wrong. That's because they were indiscriminate. You know, kid chasing a soccer ball, boom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Shit like that was happening. So then they started aiming them. So then they would sit there, and instead of having a pressure plate or some sort of switch to indiscriminately hit, they would have, and there would be a long, like a lamp wire running off into the distance into a house or into a hive.
They just touch the two ends.
They touch the two ends, so the guy could sit there for who knows how fucking long. And when the U.S. convoy comes by or the patrol comes by, he waits till he wants, touches the two wires, kaboom.
Yeah, and
so
bro,
that's indiscriminate.
That's why, like 04, 05, like dudes on rooftops with phones or radios, like they got fucking taken out, dude.
Toasted. Absolutely. And that's where a lot of like the hearts and minds started playing in, because people were getting shot,
Bro.
and claiming like, oh, he wasn't doing anything. It's like, dude.
And here's the thing, man, because I'm very upfront and honest about my experience over there. And I'm the first to tell you, a lot of innocent people got fucking killed in Ramadi.
Sure. Yeah.
Because, I mean, fuck, man. Maybe for every fucking 5 dudes taking a phone call on their roof, maybe one of them was calling in an IED.
Right.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
But in order to come home from that city, not in a fucking body bag, you had to be that really ultra aggressive, hard target.
Yeah.
And bro, like you set that standard for yourself, the enemy starts to know that as well.
Big time.
And bro, I'm not saying this like boasting about it or beating my chest, bro. It's sad. Yeah. It's fucking sad that that's what we had to do as young men. Mm-hmm. But that's what we had to do as young men.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fucking crazy to look back on that now, all these years later. But if you put me back in that scenario right now, I'm coming out alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, dude, I know, like exactly like you said, they would be sitting with a wire or sitting with some type of communication device. I know then they started setting them on like different timers and whatnot. And so where did you see the evolution go from there?
When they started getting smarter. And so basically what you were talking about earlier. So instead of just having a singular charge and, using your pressure plates and your lamp wire and your pickle switches and things like that, they started actually watching how people would respond. So they would have scouts, and if the U.S. forces saw an IED, they would watch them prosecute the IED. Where do they park their cars? How many people get out? Where do they get out? Where do those people go? What are they looking for? And things started to evolve very quickly. So it went from, well, here's an IED and they found it, to, okay, well, if they think they find an IED, or we can draw them into thinking that they found an IED, they're going to park their vehicles over here and we'll kill them there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then shit started getting really wild, because then they started getting smarter, and that's where not necessarily the IEDs were getting smarter, but the enemy was getting smarter.
Yeah.
And so then the enemy would set, hey, they would put like a dead dog on the side of the road, which was classic for a while, or, a trash pile or a choke point where they're like, oh, I know they're going to drive through here. Early on, that's where they would set the charge. Now that's a draw-in to get them to stop. Well, TTPs were stop X amount of yards from the suspect item. Yeah. Well, they started getting it's about 100 yards. So then they would put a draw-in with nothing, and then some charges along the road at about 100 yards. And so while they're sitting there sending the robot down range or whatever, the convoy, the stopped element that's actually prosecuting the supposed IED just gets clacked off. Or they would set charges and then, coordinate attacks with your ambushes and all that kind of shit. So things got really hairy at that point. Those weren't even smart IEDs necessarily. Those were just the TTPs they were learning. So ours, we call them lessons learned in blood. Several guys died doing certain things, and then that's a lesson learned in blood. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? This is what caused that guy to die. So we learned our lessons, and approaching an IED the same way over and over and over is nothing we will ever do.
So then you have to be creative, huh?
And it goes back to what I was hoping the job would be, why it's such a multifaceted career, because you have to be creative. You're thinking about what
SOPs actually will kill you.
Right.
I've never thought of it like that, but that makes sense.
Because you're developing a pattern.
Yeah.
If you develop a pattern, the enemy sees your pattern, you're going to die on your pattern.
It's just like routes to an objective.
Yeah. Or if you're a jiu-jitsu guy, to refer it back, if you're always going for the same attack every time, you're going to you're going to bait them into that attack and fuck them up. Right?
Yeah.
Same shit.
Wow.
So you're always changing your routes, and it's as simple as approaching from a different direction, or when you see something. I mean, there's dudes driving way off into the distance to drive back, right? And the enemy's like, what the fuck are they doing? Where are they driving? Right? That's something as simple as that. Is like, why are they going out there? I don't know. Because this guy's like, hey, we're just going to do something fucking retarded.
Just to throw them off.
Might as well. Or maybe add a tactic. Hey, we're going to approach it from a 90-degree angle, or this is the path of least resistance is always the most dangerous path.
Once you guys could positively identify, like, okay, hey, we think or we know it's right here. Are you guys literally using metal detectors like seen on the movies? No, or is that part of the Hurt Locker? It's kind of like, the fuck is this?
Yeah. If you know there's something, or you're suspecting like, hey, up there 100 yards on the side of the road, I'm not getting my metal detector out.
Yeah.
You're putting a body in harm's way when we have robots.
Okay.
So you do that crazy approach, whether you approach from 90 degrees off to the side or go park in the middle of fucking whatever, and then come in, but you're going to launch your robot. The remote is always the right answer. So if you have a remote technique like your robot, go down there. If it gets blown up, send the next robot. If it gets blown up, send the fucking next robot. You always keep the people off the X.
Yeah.
And it's not always capable to do that. And a lot of these soft elements, when I was with the Army, sometimes you're right at a breach and there's some bullshit on the ground. And it's like, dude, if I don't take care of this right now, I'm putting my entire assault force at risk. And you can do simple stuff like avoidance. So mark and mitigate. You can put a red chem light down and be like, hey, move to secondary breach, right? You can do things like that make sense. But immediately that's a bad day because you're right on top of it. And metal detectors play a huge role in mind strike capabilities, in walking in. Patrolling is really when you're going to have your mine detectors out.
Got it.
If you, it's kind of hard to pinpoint because everything's so fluid. Every situation is going to be like, well, does a mine detector make sense here? Maybe. One aspect changes? Hell no.
Yeah.
Right. So, but if you know there's something up, you're going to send your robot, dude.
What year did the robots become prevalent? Because I don't think I remember seeing robots in 04, 05.
You know, I wasn't in the military back then.
That's right. I'm old, bro.
Like I said, I came in 2013 and they were already part of the schoolhouse curriculum.
Okay.
So I was learning the PackBot. So, I mean, my guess is, shoot, I might get slapped in the face by some of my buddies, but it's like 06, 05.
Okay.
They had to have been coming on the scene.
Because, bro, I remember, like, dude, Ramadi, it was the Wild West where it's like, look, that looks like a fucking trash pile. Hit it with a fucking 203. Yeah. We'll find out, you know.
And early on, that was the TTP shoot at it.
Yeah, dude, I know. Or maybe I don't know if it was the TTP or not, but I know that's what happened.
Accepted, yeah.
Bro, if it's like, I mean, I got a video on my phone where, fuck, dude, let's see here if I can just pull this up real quick. Because I was actually just going through a hard drive not that long from like a couple days ago and found like a bunch of old videos of me and Ramadi. And it's crazy, dude, seeing all this shit. But no, I don't know where it went. It was exactly that. Identified an IED literally on the other side of a Jersey barrier. And they just threw a charge right over the wall and fucking blew it up. And it's like, that's what we did.
Yeah.
You know?
Countercharging. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I mean, that's all you can really do.
Like, I was going to ask, what were, once you identified it, okay, this is here. I mean, you're obviously not going to investigate it too closely, right? You can, I mean, I guess it depends on a lot of different factors.
100%. Because if you can investigate it, you're gathering information. Everything's intel driven.
Okay.
So if you're like, hey, that's a yellow palm olive jug, right? And then you keep seeing these yellow palm olive jugs in this one location. Now you know that there's a bomb maker or a group that are trying to get these yellow jugs. So you could start building counter.
I see. Yeah,
so
you're
like,
conducting it. Now it's an investigation as well.
Right, because you can, just like you fight a war as, what is, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. With the boots on the ground, it's more face-to-face firepower.
Yeah.
Right? But on the back end of that, you have the spook side. Well, you can kind of start combining the two. You can start collecting intelligence and making assumptions off these groups are using these TTPs, or this area over here has started using this. So you can start to segregate bomb makers, and it's never going to be a final answer, but you can start leading yourself down a road of risk analysis. So risk assessment is huge. So if over here they're using a very sophisticated IED, but back over here in the same country, they're using rudimentary shit, you can start being like, okay, where am I at in the country and what is predominant?
Yeah.
Right. And so you start building these risk assessments that'll help you with mission planning, that help you with responses. You'd be like, dude, they've been rudiment, and you're always taking into account that anything's possible. But if over here, 99% of the time they're rudimentary, you walk into it kind of expecting a rudimentary, not looking for some of the advanced TTPs. Uh-huh. Over here, if they're very advanced, you walk into that slow because you have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
So everything is dictated off, I'm not going to say best guess, but it's a culmination of information.
Yeah.
So if you go up to this and you're just like, yep, that's an IED, and you countercharge it, blow it off the face of the earth, you gain no information.
I see.
So you're not gaining any traction for later.
So then would your, and again, I know you're going to say the answers would be depends, but would you sometimes countercharge it and then sometimes attempt to disable it as it sits there?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Depends.
Okay.
I mean, if this is an MSR, you're going to want to try to do everything. So the EOD slogan is the protection of personnel and property. Right. So if you can protect property and personnel, obviously at a cost, at a low cost, you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Now, if this is a side street or it's a hut that there's a cache of weapons sitting there or anything, dude, just blow it off the face of the earth. Right. Get as much intel as you can safely and then just fuck it up. Who cares?
Let me ask you this, because this might have been the rumor mill just running rampant when we were deployed. But once the IEDs in 05, they started to be initiated via radio frequency.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Because there's no, I think the FAA is the one who dictates radio frequencies. And there's no FAA presence in CENTCOM in most countries.
Yeah. And so what we were told is we have the ability to fly one of our birds over and detonate them all because we could push out all the different frequencies, but we're not doing that because we can't risk civilian casualties and then our Marines eat them later that day. Is there any validity to that? Do you think that's just the rumor mill?
I've never heard of that.
Okay.
So I have heard of ECM, electronic countermeasures.
Jammers, so they can't. Yes, and I remember those were mounted on the front of the big minesweeping vehicles and shit. So like it'll disallow them to engage it.
Correct.
But you
It's like
can't,
a protection bubble.
Yes, but you can't push out the frequency yourself. Is it because you wouldn't know? Is it? I don't know how that world works at all. Really.
You know, that's a good question. I think I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I've never heard of that.
I mean, this has been your world for a long time. If you never heard of that, it probably means it's not feasible.
Yeah, you know, but thinking about it scientifically, like, okay, but you're going to push out all these frequencies at once. It just, because some of these are based off frequencies, but you need that radio, whether it's wired into the tone, right? So it needs to receive it like a direct message. Maybe there's not enough power to do it on all. So how much power do you need to make that one mobile radio make the right tone?
Yeah.
Because if you're not giving enough juice, it's not going to make the right tone. So you'd have to push out a shit ton of power over a ton of frequencies. And you're talking overseas because there's no regulation on frequencies, every frequency.
Yeah.
So you're talking a shit ton of power there. So my guess is that's the issue. The jammers work really well because it can block all the frequencies. It actually, there's active and passive jamming. Active is more or less just screaming. It's just throwing out signal so nothing can get through. And your passive would be like, it would hear it and jam it.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so there's these different.
That's fucking gnarly.
And they're not foolproof, right? Like it's not 100% effective.
What, do you know the range of those jammers?
That's U.S.
Got it.
Yeah.
You may not be in anymore.
It sounds stupid as fuck. I always hate being like,
we're not going to violate OPSEC here on the Endless Endeavor.
Yeah. I always hate the term like, oh, that's secret or that's top secret or you don't need to know that or whatever. But
bro,
that's
also true.
purposely
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's kept close to chest because if the enemy knew that, now they're going to change their way. Like, they'll figure out a way to do shit. And so no, that's kept close to the chest.
Man, that shit's fucking crazy, dude. And then I know later, 06, I lost a friend to EFP when they started incorporating projectiles.
Those were horrible
as
shit,
part.
Dude.
And so I guess just talk people through what an EFP is because a lot of people have no idea.
Explosively formed projectiles. So you take a piece of metal, a softer metal generally, that's in like a conical structure, and then pack the back of it with explosives of some kind. They were using like paint cans. They were using all kinds of rudimentary shit. There's, state-sponsored. U.S. has a whole bunch of EFPs that are used for different things. But what happens is the explosion within this container pushes that softer metal out the front, and it goes from like I don't know how to describe it, and if people are watching maybe, but it's like an inward face. So if you have a round cylinder, and then you have the ring here, right, like an open end of a paint can, the cone would be pointed in. So it'd be like ice cream coned in.
Okay.
Right. And the explosives would be on the inside of that paint can. When it explodes, it reverses the ice cream cone, if you want to call it that. Right. So then it pushes that point out first, and then the trail and the ring edge follows. So it creates this weird projectile, really. It's just, reformed metal that goes at a crazy fast rate. It's armor defeating. It's some nasty shit.
And correct me if I'm wrong, what I've heard is that process of the cone being like into the explosives and then getting pushed out instantly superheats it up to a point where it's like a molten, and it allows it to just cut through anything.
Just its speed and the heat. And
because I know like our armored vehicles, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And some of them were like, I mean, the one that killed my buddy was like relatively small, but it was placed to where when it punched through their vehicle, it literally cut his legs off.
Yeah. So they would aim for the doors.
Yep.
Yeah. They got good at that because then so these are just how the enemy progresses, right? So what they started doing, they would use heat sensors, and they would use the engine compartment. So these vehicles that have been traveling in the fucking CENTCOM desert and heating themselves up, not to mention the sun, these things are hot as shit. And so they would use heat sensors to track the engine. And so when something of a right heat signature would pass in front, it would be offset. So they would measure the vehicles from a distance or whatever, but they would give it a couple feet. So or have it on a delay. But when the engine passed, it would shoot the explosives. And so they would target the drivers and the passengers. And it wouldn't be to disable the vehicle, it'd be to kill the occupants.
Yeah.
And then the U.S. started using rudimentary. So actually the Marines came up with it, I believe. I hope I'm giving credit right. But they would use they welded these steel poles on the front of their convoys and had an ammo can, and they would put glow plugs in the ammo can so it'd be hot as shit.
Oh, shit.
And so that it would falsely set off these EFPs before the vehicle got there. So the EFP would pass right in front of the vehicle, or maybe skim its bumper, or clip the engine, whatever. But the occupants would be safe. So it's this cat and mouse game back and forth.
The fucking vehicles, I mean, it got to the point where they had those on it. They had the jammers on the front. Yeah. They had their RPG cages with like the fencing on the exterior.
Just Mad Max.
It was straight up fucking Mad Max. And then also like, it was to the point where like, hey, like the gloves are off. We could do whatever the fuck we want. So dudes would be like, take their vehicle to the mechanic. We had a base called Blue Diamond on the outskirts of Ramadi. And those dudes in the auto shop would just like weld on extra armor and just hang fucking Kevlar blankets and shit, and just however the fuck you could protect your ass,
Things got wild. And I'm sure they're still wild. We kind of drew out of there, but that's why I'm not looking forward to any future conflicts, man.
Bro, I mean, again, you watch the fucking Russian-Ukraine conflict, and they're fucking chasing dudes around with drones.
Yeah.
They're shooting at them with shotguns and like running from them and shit. And it's like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
I watched a video the other day, and I don't fucking do these. I don't geek out on like fucked up videos anymore. Like, what was that? What was that website when we were really
Rotten.com.
No, that's not the one.
I was going to say that one always had like the animals killing people and car crashes.
I think it might have been Live Leak.
Well, Live Leak, yeah. Live Leak did.
I think there was one before that. But regardless, he sent me a video of a Russian soldier and a Ukrainian soldier fighting over a knife for 6 minutes.
Oh, God.
6 minutes, bro.
That's a long fucking knife.
Yeah,
fight.
dude. I mean, we do 6-minute rounds here, and they're exhausting. Now,
that's life and death.
Now it's life and death with a weapon, bro. And it was sad too, because like, I mean, it goes back to the majority of conflicts since the beginning of time. It's like those dudes spoke the same language. They were talking to each other. They were like, those dudes unlikely hate each other.
Right.
They're just their governments.
Survival,
their governments are telling them to hate each other, and it's dark, man.
Yeah.
And he finally fucking drives it into the dude, and the dude's like, "All right, you're the winner."
Oh shit!
He goes, "Man, you fought well. You fought really well. You should be proud of yourself. Please let me die here with honor." And I was like,
shit.
"Wow, dude! Like the warrior spirit of men transcends time. You would expect that encounter from like a 15th century knight or something. All right, you drove your sword in me. You were the victor.
You hold his hand as he fucking dies.
He's like, let me die with honor, man.
That's crazy.
And I was like, that's fucking human beings are nuts, man. No, that whole fucking war is like, and I'm not even going to get into the political aspects of it because I've bitched about that enough on the show. But just watching young men fucking kill each other in the manner in which they're doing it, it makes me look back on even my life, and it's like, man, why are 20-year-old men so drawn to do that?
Yeah.
You know, I talk about it very often on the show, how I look back on like, oh, weapons of mass destruction and the political agendas and shit. And it's kind of like, what were we doing there? And I ask myself those questions and just be honest with myself. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day too, it's like fucking 20-year-old men want to go fucking get it on.
Yeah.
And it's like
just a testosterone,
it is
instinctual rage.
And it's like, you look at the enemies we were fighting in Ramadi, a lot of young men from Syria and Yemen. And it's like, they just wanted to come get it on too, you know? Yeah. And again, fuck, bro, we were the invaders. It's hard to articulate that any other way at this point in my life. But I'm also not telling myself a sad story, because like, fuck, I signed up for that. And that's what ended up happening. And good, bad, or indifferent, it's like, that's just a part of my fucking life.
Yeah.
You know? And I know that a lot of veterans struggle with that, but at the end of the day, like, I think it's hard for you to hold your 20-year-old self accountable to the wisdom that your 45-year-old self can now reflect on.
Oh, yeah.
And look back on, you know?
There's too much that happens in just the maturity levels of the brain.
Yes.
Like, just chemically, and the life is so much different. I mean, it's interesting to look back, because you don't even really start your life till you're 18.
Yeah.
Some people are forced into it earlier than that, you know, parental situations or whatever. And then some people don't even start till they're 22, 23 when they get out of college.
Yep.
Right. So you're an infant in the world at those ages.
Yeah.
You don't know what the fuck is going on.
And, we kind of touched on it earlier. Like, you can find yourself in these like situations that you're holding a lot of responsibility, and like, you're in life and death situations, and you're still a child.
Yeah.
You know,
you don't even fully understand. And it might actually work out in your benefit, because you might not fully understand the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
And so the pressure is less, because you're like, oh, this is just what I'm doing.
Well, bro, and the truth is, if they tried to fight their wars with a bunch of 35-year-olds, people would be like, hold the fuck on a second.
Yeah, what
the fuck do you think you're doing? You know? You're not drafting me to go to Vietnam. And here's the thing. Like, I remember when I was a young ranger, I used to think, fuck, man, I wish I was alive during Vietnam. Jungle warfare? Fuck yeah, dude. Like, no, dude. Like, that's just getting pulled into this like bloodlust for war that's been getting fucking perpetuated really since World War II, man. Yeah. And it's like, why is our culture, and why do our politicians want to continuously do that? And it's, I try and give, again, like being a leader here, a lot of young men look up to me and ask me about military service. And I tell them the truth. And I'm like, if you're a young wild animal that wants to go find yourself in situations that are difficult and dangerous, by all means, go test yourself, go do that, right? For sure. But just try and be objective about the U.S. government, the U.S. military, what the mission is, and is it really worth your life? Yeah. And I look back on my buddies that were killed, and if I'm being honest, I have to say, like, man, I don't think their lives were worth what we got out of these wars. Yeah. And that's not dishonoring them or speaking poorly about like their sacrifice. I don't think it is at all. I think it's just honesty. And I want our young men, I want the next generation, before you go step into that role, just try and understand really what you're stepping into.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah. Because you ask any one of those families, you know, and they're going to be like, dude, I know he's proud to go this way, or he or she, right? I know they're proud to walk the walk. They signed up for it. And, you know, in my opinion, there's only so many ways that I can call like a good death. And if it's saving people or protecting freedom, I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Right. But those families want them back no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's kind of, it's an interesting sword, right?
It is, man, because it's, historically, young men fight old men's disputes.
Right.
And that's just what we do. And is there a way around it? The only way around it would be to somehow secure like a peaceful approach to negotiations and a peaceful approach to how we settle our differences. And that's not reality inside of the human spirit, man.
No. And I think we're doing a fundamental injustice to ourselves by electing people into power who have no idea how the military runs.
100%, bro.
Dude, I still think, and my wife and I talk about this all the time, like and I love certain politicians. I think certain politicians are doing great right now, especially stepping up to uncertain times and issues. But a prerequisite to being a president as the commander in chief
100%,
should be
dude.
military service.
Bro, I mean, obviously, you see William Wallace behind me. Like, I'm inspired by warriors that historically led from the front, dude. Like George Washington going across to Delaware. Like, bro, if you are willing to send our sons and daughters, like, I'm 45 years old now. If there are scenarios where it's like, hey, our security, our country's security is at risk. Our children and our women are at risk of facing an adverse reaction from this enemy.
Yeah.
If I believe that in my heart, fucking send me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you don't have the ability to come to the conclusion, fucking send me, you don't have convictions behind it. And something I've thought about, man, like for Congress to declare war, it should literally, they should have like one of those big barrels that you can fucking spin everybody's names in. And it's like, all right, out of all the congressmen, if you declare war, 5% of you have to serve on the front lines.
Yeah.
Straight up. And it's like, we know you're not going to go fucking join a Ranger team and kick a door because you're a 50-year-old fucking pussy, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to sit on a fob and you're going to be present and you're going to be getting mortared every single day.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, man. If you think that it's so important that I'm going to declare war, don't tell me that you're not willing to risk your physical safety. Because if you're willing to risk my children's safety and you're not willing to risk your own, you're full of shit. Because men like us, bro, we'd be put me on that fob then.
Yeah.
No issues.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's another Mel Gibson movie, The Patriot.
Fuck yeah,
And
bro.
dude, he talks about that when they meet up to start the Revolutionary War. And he's like, well, I'm not going to vote for a war that my sons are going to have to fight for me.
Yes.
And I'm paraphrasing, but he basically opts out of the vote.
Bro, yeah, he didn't want to be part of it.
Because he's actually thinking intelligently about what a war means.
Yeah.
And he, and of course this is a character in a movie, but Mel Gibson did a really good job of portraying it, being a very intelligent warfighter.
Yeah.
Because he had already seen the downside, and he was notorious in this movie, this character, notorious
Benjamin
for doing,
Martin.
more or less war crimes. Right.
Yeah.
And so he stands up and he was the voice of reason. And people like that, well, and go back to just the foundation of politics. People it's serving the people, for the people, by the people.
Yeah.
And we lost that a long time ago. It became a power struggle.
Yep.
Right. Those people were put in those positions. They didn't want to. They wanted to tend to their farms.
I know, right?
And it was a duty to them to go do this. Now it's like people spend their entire lives jockeying and stabbing each other in the back to get to these spots so they can be on TV or say this or that or
get their intel on the insider trading system. And all this, it's all dark shit, dude.
It's horrible.
And as soon as you are self-serving in a position that's supposed to be selfless, the system no longer works, man. And don't get me wrong, bro. I'm the first person. I pride myself on becoming an entrepreneur. My gym and this podcast, like I made a lot of money last year and I'm proud of that.
Good.
There is no wrong, there is nothing wrong with chasing financial wealth, financial freedom. You want to buy a fucking nice fucking sports car, like go do those things, right?
Big time.
That's not part of government service.
No.
If that is what is driving you into government service, you're looking at things backwards. If you want to have a nice sports car and a fucking yacht, cool. Like Andy Frisella is a friend of mine. He loves chasing the fucking the game of making money.
But his motives are on point.
That's 100%.
Yeah.
That's my point, dude.
His goal. So I love Andy. I listen to Andy all the time. But he talks in depth about you're not in customer. You're solving a problem for the customer,
bro.
Right. And it's the same concept. Like the American people have problems and they're not solving the problem.
Yeah, you're exactly right, dude. Right. No, that's a good
because you can make a ton of money and solve problems as a congressman or as a president or as these huge political powers. But if your motives are right, the people will reward you.
Yeah.
Because the people will be like, that guy makes great decisions for us. And so that goes back to like not a spiritual, but like the universe will provide. And if you have good motives and if you're just a good fucking dude and you put yourself out there repeatedly as a good dude, you'll make money.
I love that you said that because a big part of this, like again, at 44 years old now, I'm very open, or I'm very willing to like take a step back and be like, oh, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe I am thinking about this wrong, because exactly what you just said, if your motives and the manner in which you were operating were being approved by the everyday man like you and I, we probably wouldn't be upset that Congress just put themselves up for a 60% raise, right? Did you see Dan Crenshaw? He's like, hey, well, what am I supposed to do? Just never get a raise and never. And it's like, bro, you're acting like a little woman right now.
I saw a clip of him, and it made me pretty
Like,
upset.
stop acting like that. The reason people are a little upset right now that you guys put yourself up for a raise is because your performance and how you have been doing your job in accordance to the American people's expectation, you're not meeting it.
Right.
So of course, and that's the point I wanted to bring up, because you nailed it. If you guys were excelling at your job and people were stoked about how American politicians were behaving, no one would give a fuck if you gave yourself a little raise.
Dude, I bet you people would go in and be like, no, you should give them a raise.
That's right. Like, dude,
be like 60% ain't enough.
Hey,
or,
these dudes
something.
these dudes are slaying it.
Right.
They're making our country prosperous. They're making our country safer.
Yep.
Fuck, hook them up, man.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, you're right, dude.
Because the people will realize, like, I don't want that job. Do you know how much pressure is involved in making decisions that is going to get scrutinized by whether it's the few or the masses? No matter what you decide, some people are going to be like, you're fucking wrong, no matter what.
Of course, bro.
Right. So there's a lot of pressure in that. And then when you take into account, you have, hundreds of millions of people that you are quote unquote responsible for. Every decision you make affects somebody. Like, I don't know. I look to those people, and now I feel like it's a broken system. But
Yeah.
I don't want that job either. So it's hard for me.
Well, bro,
I'll talk all the shit, but if you put me in that seat, I'll be like, ooh.
Well, bro, that's the thing, man. And I get people that fucking write me all the time, and they're like, when it's time for you to step into the realm of politics. Okay. And it's like, because if you're looking around the room for the guy to lead you and you're not seeing anybody, it's because you haven't looked in the mirror yet.
Yeah, dude, that's you.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And it's like, God, fuck. As soon as because bro, I was in the military, I was a police officer. Like, I've been attached to some type of government service since I was a kid until 2020. And the last 4 years have expanded my way of thinking, like, oh, wait, this is what's possible when you build your own business, you build your own brand, you start your own show, you build like an apparel line, like these things that are like, anybody can have the creative power to go do these things.
Right.
And then you realize it's like, oh, the $100,000 a year with benefits is almost like golden handcuffs, because it's enough to keep food in your fridge and keep your house warm, which means you're comfortable.
Yeah.
But bro, you're in the hamster wheel of life, and you're never getting out of that.
That's why it's known as the rat race.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Yeah, you get stuck in that. There's actually a game, it's a board game, ironically enough, called the Rat Race. And it's a small insight to exactly what you're saying. You have to navigate all these little, call them peasant shit or whatever, like working class stuff. And the goal is to accumulate enough wealth to get on a different side of the board.
Yeah.
And once you get over there, you almost can't make a wrong decision.
Yeah.
But if you keep making these same decisions that keep golden handcuffing you into this rat race, you will never get out of it. And it's interesting. It's a simple little board game.
Wow.
But it depicts
I'm going to look into that. Dude.
Yeah.
I want my kids to play that.
Yeah. So,
because, bro, that's the truth, man. And then the other thing that they've done is they've glorified aspects of the rat race with honor and pride, and our firefighters and our police officers. And dude, don't get me wrong. If you're listening to the show and you are one of those people, I was one of those people. I was a police officer for a long time. I was a soldier for a long time. I'm not degrading those positions at all. But what I do think is necessary is to understand that that is a phase of your life that you should walk through. And then as you grow and develop and learn about yourself and develop wisdom, man, you can step beyond that. And now you can start to really make a life that you want.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I talk about this stuff, I'll have people write me and be like, bro, it's easy for you to say because you had jujitsu to fall back on. You had a skill set that you could market and that you could sell. And it's like, guys, you're telling yourself a lie.
yeah.
That was something that I was able to capitalize on and build into a highly successful business. But to tell yourself because I had something that means that you don't, what the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah.
Every single person has the capacity to get their nose in the books, start to fucking like think about like, dude, what brings me joy? What am I passionate about? And build a path towards that.
Dude, I have this funny quick story about this. So a friend of mine, he used to run an insurance company in Texas. He handled most of the state of Texas. He lost one of his best insurance agents, and she just quit. She was making high six figures, like almost $500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And she just came into him one day and was like, hey, this isn't for me. I'm out. And he was like, dude, okay. You know, he's a super good guy. I love him. His name's Greg, a good friend of mine. All the Gregs.
You're surrounded by a bunch of good Gregs.
My little brother's name's Greg too. But so he's kind of, you know, talks to her and he's like, what are you talking about? This is a great job. You're crushing it. You're one of my best employees. Why? Turns out she found out that she loves knitting. She has a side hobby is knitting. That's just what she did for fun. She found out that you can only get this certain type of yarn from this certain part of the world, and no one in the US did that. So she started importing it and started a little yarn company in her house. It's like, so then take the percentage of people who knit in the United States is very small. Then take the percentage of people who are, you know, take it very seriously and then want this specific yarn. This lady was making $1 million a year selling yarn out of her house.
There you go, man.
Right. So, you know, I do hear that. And I am guilty of it myself. You know, I have my little bitch voice that comes in and is like, you don't have any marketable skills and this, that, or the other. My wife is actually the one who usually talks me down off that one, because everyone has a skill. Everyone has something that if you look at it from the right lens, maybe it doesn't make you $1 million a year, but you can enjoy your career.
Well, bro, I love that we're talking about this because I've been really geeking out on this stuff lately. And I talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago, but I went and did a millionaire mastermind down in Laguna Beach. And I was in a room with dudes that have built AI companies, like dudes that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Right. They have more. I joked on the show when I talked about this episode. I said, they have more money than myself and all of you guys listening combined. Like, you know what I mean? And that's not casting shade at anyone, right? That's just, and one thing, and bro, there was like 16 dudes here that just, the amount of money that they generated was mind boggling. And they all said the same thing. They all landed on the exact same thing because they're very open about it. And they're like, hey, nothing will work for you until you believe in yourself and you believe in your worth. And not only do you have to believe in your worth and believe in yourself, but you can't tell yourself negative things about yourself either. They're like, if you start to say, just like you said, like, well, I'm not good enough, I'm this, I'm that, why would anyone listen to me? Right? As soon as I say, why would anyone listen to my show? Guess what's going to happen? People are going to stop listening to my show. For sure. And bro, when I first started it, there was a part of me that's like, why am I starting a podcast? This feels weird.
Big time.
Right?
Yeah.
But I did Cleared Hot with Andy Stump a couple times, and people were like reaching out to me. They're like, dude, we love how you run or how you interact on a podcast. You should do your own. You should do your own. So instead of saying, oh, I'm not good enough to do my own. No, the truth is there's people that like how I fucking perform on a podcast and they want to consume this. That's empowering.
Yeah.
We disempower ourselves more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And these guys were big proponents of that. They're like, as soon as you interject a negative belief about yourself, it stifles growth and it stifles the energy that is needed for you to become the winner that you're trying to become.
Not only does it stifle it, but it actually projects the opposite.
That's exactly right.
Because if I came on here insecure about talking about what I want to talk about or anything, people would kind of be like, this guy hits me kind of wrong, right?
Yeah.
You know, and especially as a host, you got to come into it with some confidence. Like, hey, I don't know if anyone will take anything out of this, but we're going to have a fucking fun time.
Yeah, bro.
And see what happens.
And you feel the vibe. And bro, I love that you just said that, because I have had guests that you can tell they don't have the confidence and telling the story or the mission behind what they're currently doing.
Yeah.
And even though on its surface it looks like an honorable mission or a good project, you can tell something's missing.
Yeah.
And that's the intangibles. And people fucking pick up on that shit instantly, dude.
Big time.
You know?
And there's just styles too. Like I'm not a huge fan of Joe Rogan. Like I love Joe Rogan as a human, but like listening to his podcast, some of the episodes, I'm like, you know what? I got something I got to do. Or I start to lose interest. That's no shade to Joe. He's a phenomenal dude. But then
bro, if everybody liked chocolate ice cream, the world would be pretty fucking boring.
Big time, right? But the only reason I'm using Joe is because A, it's true, and B, he's the biggest podcast in the fucking world.
Yeah.
Right? And I listen to select episodes and whatever, but some of them I just start to lose interest. Andy Frisella, I soak that in.
Yeah.
You know, I just love his style. I think he's a phenomenal host, but he's also like blunt, in your face. If you know, if you have a problem, well, you're the fucking problem.
Well, bro,
and I
that's
love
like,
that shit.
That's and again, like I went and did Andy's show, and that's what I loved about it, because I love that vibe too. Let's just dive in and have fun.
Yeah, man.
Whereas, like, for instance, like I was listening because me and Sean Ryan, we don't know each other. We follow each other on Instagram, a couple messages, but we run in a similar circle. So we have a lot of mutual friends, like Chad Robichaud, Andy Stump, and those guys. And so I was like, man, fucking Sean Ryan is slaying right now in the podcast world.
Yeah.
And I don't have time to consume many podcasts, but I was like, I'm gonna start listening to Sean just because I want to know what about his show is really drawing a massive base of listeners.
Yeah.
And then when I listened to it, I was like, oh no, he's not sitting down doing conversations. He's doing a very well thought out and structured interview.
Yes, because it's his question. He even has the cards.
That's what I'm saying.
And his shit is like I don't know how to describe it. Maybe I'm cutting you off here, but because of how smart the question is and the IQ level of what's happening in his head versus what's being projected, the amount of feedback from the guest or whoever he's talking to, he brings out the good 100%. Stuff to everyone. And so I'm right on par with you.
He has very specific questions, and then he lets those people really just tell their tale, right?
Big time.
And I thought about it. I was like, well, I do think that's the proof is in the pudding. Mm-hmm. That's a good method of producing podcasts because the masses are loving it, right?
But and the people are coming to you with the stuff.
Yeah.
He's got some big people who have come on, especially recently.
Oh, I know. Bro, we got fucking Trump. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got the fucking president. That's you're at the top of the food chain.
You do. But the ones, and I like the presidential ones because that showed a shift in paradigm and, like, you know, big media is dying.
Yes,
and it's
bro.
Beautiful. I fucking love it. But I love the whistleblowers.
Oh, I know, dude.
Because it's finally like, hey, someone's got some fucking nuts and they come out with stuff. And the American people deserve. I'm going to go on record being like, hey, 100% transparency is not the way. It cannot happen. You just can't fucking do it. But as much transparency as possible instead of 90% lies.
Well, wait, I was just going to say, if there are things that they can't be transparent about, just be transparent about that.
Yeah,
like you said,
fair,
like you said when I asked about the IEDs, like, hey, that's something that can't be discussed publicly.
Yeah.
And hey, like it or not, like, hey, sorry.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you tell a lie about it. And so that's where it gets dark, dude.
This was a huge lesson I learned in leadership in the military is coming at a problem. And I'm kind of losing my train of thought now. What were we just talking about?
You're saying how, as opposed to lying about something.
Oh, yes.
Like just be transparent that you can't tell the truth.
Right. So saying the words, I don't know. Right. You don't have to be like, I don't know, and throw your hands up, you know, like a fool. But the words, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Yeah.
Right. Give like, hey, what's going on out here? Like, take for instance the drone thing. They got to know what's going on. But if they didn't,
that's right.
Be like, hey, you know what? I hear you. Right now, we're looking into it, but we just don't know. Here's what we're doing about it. The FBI is on it. The CIA is on it. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right. More than just be like, you know, silence with
the
shoulder shrug.
Yeah, like, because now you got guys like it was on Sean Ryan talking about like potentially Chinese drones, and it's like in a vacuum or in the absence of fucking information, that's when people's wheels just start spinning.
Right.
You know,
because you always assume the worst, and then the tinfoil hats come off, and it's, you know, anything that you can possibly fathom is now an option.
And then also, like, if the last 4 years have taught us anything, is that the more tinfoil it is, the more potential validity it seems like it may have. You know, Dude. It's like all of these things that were like, oh, you're nuts, you're this, you're that. Oh, wait, that's actually true. Oh, wait, that's actually true. Dude. Like, did you listen to the episode with Sean about the Tesla truck driver?
No, I don't think so,
bro. It's. And again, is it tinfoil hat or is there some?
This is the Berg. The recent one,
the one about the Tesla that blew up in front of the.
So I caught the highlights of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did watch snippets of it and some of the stuff that was being put out.
And it just makes you say, like, bro, what we're being told is continuously bullshit.
Yeah.
And what is really going on? And again, I think that's also another reason why his show's doing so well is because people Bro, they know that the narrative is a lie. That's one thing we do know. The narrative that we get pushed from our political leadership and mass media sources, we know that's a lie.
Right.
That's no longer tinfoil hat.
No.
So now that we know that's a lie, what sources can we seek to find truth? And I think people are we're in the weeds on that.
Yeah.
People are sifting through that, trying to figure out what resonates with them and what doesn't, you know?
Yeah. Well, Sean has set the precedence for truth.
Yeah.
You're not coming on Sean's show and telling a bunch of bullshit. So he's got a good team around him, you know, like they're researching the people as well. And you have to have at least some sort of validity to even get that seat.
Yeah.
And so people can trust what he's saying. So I think Sean's doing a fantastic job of getting truth put out there for sure.
And he doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to do his show in 2025.
He doesn't know it yet.
He doesn't know it yet. That's part of my, I have visions.
Well, you don't know it yet, but I'm coming with you. So.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude.
Just to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, dude. I have visions for 2025.
Good for you.
And it's, I just wrapped my book up. I mean, and by wrapped it up, I mean, stopped writing.
Yeah, the process.
But I have to edit and publish and I'm actually going to be meeting with Chad Robichaud about this because he told me he'd help me walk through the book process.
Nice.
Because he's done it several times and found a lot of success in it, right?
Yeah.
But I want to get the book out. I want to get an actual hard release date. And then around the release date of my book, I'm going to fucking call in favors on all my homies, you know,
Do it,
the Black Rifle guys and Andy Stump and Fieldcraft and Andy Frisella. It's like, because I've done all their podcasts already, but I want to be very intentional and do a big podcast tour right as the book's releasing.
Absolutely.
And just help spread the word of what my message is and help me continue to grow this platform as a result, you know?
And the cool thing is with that network, if those guys, I mean, if they know you well enough to have you on the show and, you know, well enough to where you can just call them up and be like, hey, this is what's up, then they know your message is true.
Yeah.
And they're going to support you 100%.
And the cool thing is I've been very intentional over the last 4 years as this platform has grown and everything's kind of happened. I've been very intentional to never call in favors with guys.
Yeah.
Ever, dude. Because I have people tell me all the time, they're like, bro, if you're friends with Andy Stump and you're friends with this guy, why don't you ask him to get you on Joe Rogan? I was like, because
it's not what you do.
it's not what you do.
No.
The second that I call Andy, and I text with Andy this morning, we're close, right?
Yeah.
He's not my best friend, but I consider him a friend. I could fucking text him. We go train jiu-jitsu next week, right?
Sure.
The second that I take my connection with him as a friend and try and pull a favor out of it, man, it gets gross fast.
Big time.
And people do that more often than not.
Yeah.
And so it's like, dude, let things happen organically. And now, just like you said, now I feel like I am good enough. I built big enough relationships with those guys that, hey, bro, let me do your show next week.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I actually went through a period. So I grew up with Jared Taylor of Black Rifle. And we didn't talk for a long period of time while he was in the military. I was, you know, towards the end when I moved back to Washington. And it actually felt gross. He hit me up and was like, dude, come on out. That's where I met Mike. I was talking about the rally race.
Yeah.
I was so awkward at that rally race because I was like, dude, I don't want him to feel like I'm mooching off him.
Yeah.
Right. And until you develop the confidence of he's just a dude, I'm just a dude, and just have fun. But in that early stages, it's to me, I'm awkward about it. And it's something I got to work on. But when I meet someone who I look up to, I almost stay really reserved and watch what I say because I don't want to come across as that dude who's coattail riding.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of people are kind of inherently drawn to coattail riding.
Yeah.
And it's, I just want to be very intentional about not being that person, you know?
100%.
And the thing is, it's weird because they call it the bro vet community. And it's this group of veterans that kind of got notoriety post GWAT. And some people love them and some people hate them.
Yeah.
And it's I get along with all those guys.
Yeah.
I want to be friends with those guys. Why wouldn't I want to be? And every time I've shared time and space with them, it's always been a good time. I went out for Andy's grand opening of his Kalispell Black Rifle.
Nice.
And all of his friends are out there and it was really fun, right? But just because you're rubbing elbows and making friendships with these guys that have big followings or, you know, the capacity to really put you on the map, if you just let it happen organically, that's where it happens.
Yeah.
As soon as you're fucking hey, me, good luck.
You're going to get written off. 100%.
Yeah.
Dude, and Mike Glover's another example of somebody that I met and I was like, dude, I don't want to text him because I want to be too needy, or I don't want to, you know what? He called me up one day and was like, hey man, how are you doing? And I was like, well, since you're calling, I had just gotten out of the military, put in a whole bunch of job applications, got no feedback. It was kind of like in a lull, like just not feeling good. I was like, well, since you're calling me in, I'm not doing too hot. And so we talked for an hour, hour and a half. And at the end, he was like, well, check this out, man. You know that I can make a couple phone calls and we could square you away. And I was like, no. And he's like, good, because I want to see you struggle.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're the fucking man. Thank you. Like, so I know at the end of the day, I'll never fail because I have really good friends.
Yep.
But they're going to let me struggle because that's what really good friends fucking do.
Yep.
Because that's how I grow. And they're not going to cut that short. They're not going to hand me cake. You know, that's not how it goes. And so I was very thankful when Mike was like, good, I'm going to let you struggle. And I was like,
and bro, and it's cool that dudes can do that and say that to you, give you a little peace of mind.
Yeah.
But also know, like, bro, I ain't here to, no one's coming to fucking save you either.
Right. There it is, dude. Yeah.
It's like, I have a partnership. I'm part of the Vortex Pro team. And so we've got like a Vortex optic there. And, I was talking to Seamus, who's the president of the company one day, and we was just talking about a period of time where me and my wife were like flat broke. And it's like reflecting on that, like, bro, to tell you the truth, that period of time, like post contracting, when I was a fucking college student in between jobs with a fucking baby, so maybe the most stressful period of time in my life.
I bet.
Way worse than war.
Yeah.
Way worse than war.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, just so you know, man, like, now that you're part of the Vortex team, you will never experience a time in your life where you're broke again. And it's like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
And I don't get money from Vortex right now. Our partnership is separate from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he just knows I'm a good enough dude that if it were to come to that, we'll find something for you.
Right.
And that might mean I'm moving to Wisconsin
Sure.
and I'm fucking screwing optics together in the warehouse.
Yeah.
So be it.
Right.
But letting
when
you,
you're flat broke, being a box boy ain't a big deal.
no, fuck
dude.
no, man. That's actually a good peace of mind knowing like,
For
hey,
sure.
once you got good friends that have your back, you got options.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at, man.
Big time.
Bro, I told you the podcast I like to shoot for 2 hours. We're at 2:10. We're just warming up.
I was gonna say,
so I'm gonna tell you right now.
Don't stop me yet.
You're
dude.
you're local, so we'll do follow-on episodes. You know,
I would love it.
Every few months, maybe we fucking just rap about whatever's going on. You know,
Big time.
But I always like to wrap up the show with what's next for you, and then how to contact you if people are interested. If that's something you're comfortable with.
So I'm just dipping my feet in this world now.
Okay.
Right? Like I did a podcast with some Australian buddies a while back, and I was like, dude, that was fun. And I've always been a networker. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually putting together my own little podcast. Not necessarily the plan right now, and it'll always evolve. Everything's always going to change. So I'm only telling you, what I have in my brain right now. But I'm going to put on a YouTube channel. And what I want to do is basically every morning, every other morning, like pretty often, several times a week, I want to get on there and just do a little one-on-one with the camera and motivate people.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy, 5 to 10 minutes, bring in some aspects of outside, like politics was always just flying high for a long time. But I want to look people in the face and just be like, dude, wake up and fucking win. It's a simple message, but we forget it. And if you just remind people every day, something simple they can listen to on their way to work, and it's honestly for me just as much as it is for them because
Bro, it's an accountability tool.
It is.
I've found that through this podcast.
Dude, you gotta live undeniable if you expect people to be undeniable.
When you preach a message of power, if you're not walking in that power, your universe is out of alignment.
Right.
So,
and you'll be found out.
yeah. Yeah.
Really fucking quick. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of my first step. And I actually have pieces of the studio arriving today at my house.
Oh, wow.
So I'm trying to get that going really quick. It's going to be called Warrior Enigma.
Okay.
And the enigma piece is just misunderstanding. I believe everybody can be a warrior. Now, there's different aspects. Like, not everyone's going to go shoot a gun and be, a war warrior. But the soccer mom who, their husband has lunch every day. The kids are dressed and off to school on time, and the laundry's done, and she still sneaks in a workout.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fucking warrior.
Fuck yeah, bro.
You know what I'm saying? So I think everybody has an inner warrior, and I really want to draw that out of everyone. So
Bro, I'm getting chills hearing you talk about it because that means it's rooted in truth.
100%.
You know what I mean? I feel your energy.
Yeah.
And I think, unlike where like most people, when they share ideas, like a lot of people in people's circles will try and be naysayers.
Yeah.
Around here, I preach the opposite of that. Like, you're going to win at this.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be good for that.
Yeah.
And bro, I barely know you. We've been talking for 2 hours and 13 minutes. You have the energy for that.
I hope so, man.
People will fucking feel your love and your power and want to lean into that, dude.
I've heard it a lot from my friends, and I have a really tight group of friends. small group, and a couple of them I grew up with, and then my network is expanding outward. But the group of people who know me best, like true to my core, have been telling me left, right, and sideways, hey, dude, you should start something. And I've been kind of in that rut, like, who wants to hear my fucking voice, right? What do I have to say? But
You got a lot to say, bro.
But that's the problem
Yeah.
is like, I'm learning to be confident in myself now. And because the military was suppressed confidence. You have confidence in one direction.
That's right.
Right. And it's not a negative suppression, but you're focused on one direction because that's what people told you to focus on. It was really hard for me to get out. And I've only been out for 2 months. Just a little over.
Shit. Okay. I
I
didn't know.
retired end of October.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
I didn't know
So-
it was that fresh.
Oh yeah, dude. So I'm riding the like broke train on the back end where, it doesn't feel good because the money's not coming in the same. The purpose is a little bit gone because you kind of left that tribe. And
Yeah.
no one's going to call you to come help at the
Bro,
shop.
you're going to fall into your next mission and your next purpose, and it's going to blow your fucking mind. I can
hope so.
already, I see it. I feel it, bro.
Good. I
It's
appreciate
fucking
that, dude.
cool, man.
Yeah.
And again, it's going to take you to, it's just going to expand your way of thinking, man. Because like for me, I can stand up in front of 50 people on the mats. I'll do it tonight, and I will teach a lesson. And I like to integrate some charisma and some humor. And just for me, if you're going to come here after work and spend 90 minutes with me, that's a duty for me to make sure you enjoy that 90 minutes, right?
Yeah.
You learn how to be that person and give people value while also like really letting them know that you respect their time and their energy. And I learned to do that as a jujitsu professor, but it's the same energy I try and give to people that listen to the show. Cause it's like, bro, if you choose to log into your YouTube channel, that's an honorable thing to do.
Yeah.
And you got to respect that.
Yeah.
And you got to deliver something that they deserve to hear. And once that symbiotic relationship is formed, like, bro, I look at my listeners all the time as like friends. Cause I'll have people, it doesn't happen often, but it happens often enough where I'm like, I'm out to dinner with my family and someone will come up and be like, hey, Greg, I don't want to be the dude interrupting your dinner, but I just want to say I love your show, man. I just wanted to shake your hand. And I'll always stand up, introduce myself, ask their name, and there's already a relationship formed. It's not like, who the fuck is this guy? No, man. It's already there, you know?
Some of the highest points in my life was when I was coaching. And some of the players, every now and then, after you just kind of beat on them a little bit, like learn this, they'd come to me afterwards and be like, hey, man, thank you.
That's where the fucking magic's at, bro.
Oh, dude. And I would like, that gets me emotional. That I'm like, dude, like, when someone can look at you and be like, hey, it doesn't have to be like you changed my life, but you believed in me or you spoke this message or you did something that made this instance great enough for me to come over and tell you thank you. I'm winning.
Yep.
Because I reached that one person, so I know there's more. I don't know how many more. It doesn't really matter because that one person's enough. If you can say a powerful enough message one time to reach one person, who gives a shit about, the rest of it?
Yeah.
Right. It's just, I don't know. I find that super powerful stuff. So hopefully that comes across in my Warrior Enigma.
Well, bro, as you start to put content together, you start to build this platform or whatever, we'll circle back into another episode when we're ready to literally like post links and pages and be like, hey, this is where you go. This is how you log in or however you decide to structure it. Cause I want to help your mission, bro.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So, I mean, if people want to follow along and kind of like, you're talking ground zero.
Yeah.
Right?
You're 2 months out, bro. And,
Yeah.
and like you said, I think it might've been before we were recording, but it's like, man, you can't dive into much when you're active duty.
Yeah.
Because you're just bound by policy. It is what it is.
Yeah. And, no love lost there, but I actually bought a bunch of equipment a year plus ago.
See, bro,
and it's been sitting getting dust because I was like, dude, I can't say what I want to say. I can't swear all the time. I can't be like, oh no, that leadership was this or that or that.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to be authentic, pure.
Yep.
Right. And so now I'm finally at that point and now I'm finding my confidence. I feel like the ball's rolling.
Fuck yeah, bro.
So I do have.
You're on Instagram?
That's the only one I have. I think they're.
That's the only one I have to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I have a
when are you
Facebook,
getting
but I
an
haven't checked
X?
it.
I'm like, I'm not getting an X.
No,
I've
never had X. I've never had Twitter. I have none of that. I have a Facebook and I haven't checked it in 5 years. So my name's on there, but I'm never going to respond.
What's your Instagram?
Is just Jeff _Ottele, Ottele.
Okay, I'll put it in the show notes if people
sure,
want to
dude. I
fucking
appreciate
scroll
that.
up and get on the fucking train in its earliest phases.
I know,
man.
right? And I'm hoping that I can post some stuff along the way, even just fuck ups and be like, dude, hey, if you're trying to start a podcast, like I'm trying to motivate people in all aspects of life. So if I do something, I'm like, hey, this is astronomically stupid, I'm gonna post that shit.
Well, bro, for listeners also, like you sat down in my studio, you started telling me things about my board that I didn't fucking know about. I'm like, oh, who is this guy, dude? You're like, oh, you can Bluetooth it and you can have call-ins on the show. And I was like,
that goes along with being an EOD tech. You overthink everything.
yeah.
So when I was looking for equipment, I'm like, I'm not going to buy broke equipment. I'm going to buy I'd rather put myself out money up front.
Bro, I tell people that all the time.
Buy once, cry once, man.
Once you have a show that reaches a lot of people, one of the most common questions I get is, hey, I'm interested in starting a show. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? Mm-hmm. Spend a few grand and do it right.
Yeah, dude.
Because you're competing against a bunch of other people that are spending the money and doing it right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can start a podcast on this fucking phone, right? If you want to, but good luck being competitive, you know, like spend the money and do it right.
Your content has to be on point. Otherwise you're going to get passed over because the guys who started on their phones were the early guys. And now they're powerhouses. They're monsters now.
Like Joe Rogan got away with it. That's because he was number one.
Well, look at Mr. Beast. I'm not a huge fan of his content.
Whatever, I like Mr. Beast, man.
More power to him, dude, because he's one of the early and he is the biggest since he has TV shows on Netflix now, dude.
His fucking shows where they have 500 contestants and shit. Man, no,
but that dude started on like a janky ass camera.
And he also does some wild shit. Like, hey, put me on a raft for a week or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, good for him.
Like, he might not be like a savage in the circles that we come from, but that dude's brain is very savage in its own way. And I'm pretty fascinated by it.
But that's what I'm saying. Respect from coming from literally, early edition shitty phone camera to powerhouse Netflix special.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah,
dude.
he's killing it. But
well, cool, man. Your dog's begging for attention. He's getting petted here, and I have to piss, so we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you coming out. This was fun.
I really appreciate it.
And we're going to fucking do more, undoubtedly, bro.
Love it.